Three men cornered Officer Ava Merritt behind a gas station on Highway 12, their leader hungry for revenge. She fought back, but she was outnumbered and running out of breath. No cameras, no witnesses, no backup, just her and three thugs who wanted her dead. Then a 7-year-old boy whispered to his father, "Dad, that lady needs help." What happened next would change all their lives forever. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The heat rose off Highway 12 in shimmering waves, distorting the desert landscape until the horizon looked like it was melting into the sky. It was the kind of afternoon that made people want to stay indoors with the AC cranked high, blinds pulled tight against the punishing sun. But out here, on this lonely stretch of asphalt cutting through the Nevada wasteland, there was no escape from the heat. It pressed down like a physical weight, making the air thick and hard to breathe. Officer Ava Merritt had been patrolling this route for 3 years, and she'd never gotten used to the summer heat. Even with the cruiser's AC at full blast, sweat trickled down her spine, making her uniform cling uncomfortably to her back. She took a long drink from her water bottle, her eyes scanning the empty road ahead. Highway 12 was usually quiet this time of day. Most travelers knew better than to be out in this heat if they could help it. That's why the van caught her attention. It was a beat-up white cargo van, the kind that had seen better days about 10 years ago. Rust ate at the wheel wells, and one of the rear doors was a different shade of white than the rest of the vehicle, clearly replaced at some point. The van was driving erratically, drifting slightly over the center line before jerking back, and as Ava pulled up behind it, she noticed the registration sticker on the license plate was 2 years expired. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47, Ava said into her radio, her voice calm and professional despite the unease prickling at the back of her neck. "I'm pulling over a white cargo van, Nevada plates David Henry 7392, westbound on Highway 12, mile marker 47. Vehicle shows expired registration." "Copy that, Unit 47, the dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Proceed with caution. Running the plate now." Ava hit her lights and siren. The van didn't respond immediately, continuing on for another quarter mile before finally pulling into the parking lot of a rundown gas station. The place was called Desert Stop, though half the letters on the sign had burned out years ago, leaving it reading DZ's RT Top. The station had probably been busy once, back when Highway 12 was a main thoroughfare, but the interstate had drawn most of the traffic away decades ago. Now it was just a forgotten outpost, serving the occasional local and the unlucky travelers who missed their exit. Ava pulled in behind the van, positioning her cruiser at an angle the way she'd been trained, giving herself cover if things went wrong. She watched the van carefully, looking for any movement, any sign of what she was dealing with. The windows were tinted dark, another violation, making it impossible to see inside. "Unit 47, be advised," the dispatcher came back on, and there was a note of tension in her voice that made Ava's hand move instinctively closer to her service weapon. "Vehicle is registered to Duke Fallon, white male, age 34. Multiple priors including assault, drug possession, and resisting arrest. Last known address is..." Ava's blood ran cold. Duke Fallon. She knew that name. She knew it very well. 2 years ago, Ava had been the arresting officer when Duke was caught running a drug operation out of a warehouse in Reno. It had been her testimony that had put him away, her evidence that had made the case stick. Duke had sworn revenge in the courtroom, his eyes burning with hatred as the judge read his sentence. "You're going to regret this, bitch," he'd shouted as bailiffs dragged him away. "I swear to God, you're going to regret this." She'd received the standard warning about possible retaliation, had been cautious for a few months, but as time passed and nothing happened, she'd allowed herself to relax. Duke was supposed to be locked up for another 3 years at least. "Dispatch, when was Fallon released?" Ava asked, her voice tight. There was a pause. "Records show early release 6 weeks ago. Good behavior." 6 weeks. He'd been out for 6 weeks, and she hadn't been notified. Ava's hand closed around her weapon, thumb releasing the safety strap on her holster. This had just gone from a routine traffic stop to something potentially much more dangerous. "Dispatch, I need backup at Desert Stop gas station, Highway 12, mile marker 47. "Copy, Unit 47. "Nearest unit is 23 minutes out. Do you want to wait?" Ava watched the van, still no movement. 23 minutes in this heat, sitting in a parking lot, staring at a vehicle that might or might not contain a man who'd threatened her life. Every instinct told her to wait for backup. But if she waited, and whoever was in that van decided to run, she might lose them. And if Duke was inside, if he was back to his old business, this might be her only chance to get him off the streets before he hurt someone. Negative, dispatch. I'm proceeding with the stop. Keep that backup coming. Copy that. Stay safe, 47. Ava took a deep breath, centering herself. She'd done hundreds of traffic stops. She was trained for this. The fact that it might be Duke didn't change the procedure. She stepped out of the cruiser, the heat hitting her like a physical blow after the air-conditioned interior. The asphalt was soft under her boots, and the air tasted like dust and gasoline. "Driver, turn off the engine and show me your hands," she called out, her voice carrying across the empty parking lot. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the van's engine cut off. Ava's hand rested on her weapon, ready but not drawn. She approached from the rear angle, staying in what officers called the fatal funnel, the space where she had the most visibility and the most options if things went bad. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. It was Duke Fallon, and he looked exactly as she remembered, tall and rangy, with prison-pale skin and tattoos creeping up his neck. His head was shaved, and his eyes were hidden behind mirrored sunglasses, but Ava could feel his gaze on her like a physical touch. "Well, well, well," Duke said, and his voice was a lazy drawl that didn't match the tension in his shoulders. "Officer Merritt, fancy meeting you out here." "Keep your hands where I can see them," Ava ordered, ignoring the way her heart hammered against her ribs. "License and registration." Duke spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. "Come on now, officer. This how you treat an old friend?" "We're not friends, Fallon. License and registration. Now." "You know," Duke said, taking a step away from the van, "I've been thinking about you a lot these past 2 years. Locked up in that cell, I had plenty of time to think. To plan." Ava's hand moved to her weapon. "Stop right there. Don't take another step." But Duke wasn't alone. The van's sliding door suddenly opened and 2 more men emerged. Ava recognized them from Duke's old crew, Tony Reeves, a stocky man with a flattened boxer's nose, and Marcus Webb, younger and meaner, with eyes like a shark. They'd both done time alongside Duke, and they'd both walked free in the same early release program. "Dispatch, I need that backup now," Ava said into her radio, backing toward her cruiser. 3 suspects, potentially hostile. Now, Duke said, pulling off his sunglasses to reveal eyes glittering with malice. "No need for that. We just want to talk." They were spreading out, moving to flank her. Ava's training kicked in. Don't let them surround you. Maintain distance. Keep your exits open. But the parking lot was empty except for one old pickup truck at the far pump, and there was nowhere to run that they couldn't catch her. "Stay back," Ava warned, drawing her weapon now. "I will shoot." "In broad daylight? At 3 unarmed men?" Duke laughed, but there was no humor in it. "See, that's the thing about being a cop. You got all these rules. We don't." Tony moved right. Marcus moved left. Duke came straight ahead. Ava made a split-second decision. She couldn't let them surround her in the open. She needed cover, needed to get to a position where she could see them all at once. Behind the gas station there was a wall. It would put her back against something solid, give her a defensible position. She ran. "Get her!" Duke shouted, and their footsteps pounded behind her. Ava rounded the corner of the building, her boots skidding on loose gravel. The back of the gas station was even more run down than the front. Crumbling concrete, weeds pushing through cracks in the pavement, rusted dumpsters overflowing with trash. The smell of old garbage and gasoline was overwhelming in the heat. And most importantly, there were no cameras back here. No witnesses. Just a stretch of sun-baked concrete hidden from the road. She'd made a mistake. Ava spun, weapon raised, but Tony was already on her. He grabbed her gun arm, slamming it against the wall with brutal force. Pain exploded up her arm, and her fingers spasmed, the weapon clattering to the ground. She drove her knee up, catching Tony in the groin, and he grunted but didn't let go. Then Marcus hit her from the other side, and she was going down, the 3 of them bearing her to the hot concrete. "No!" Ava fought with everything she had, landing blows, trying to break free, but 3 against 1 were impossible odds. Tony pinned her left arm. Marcus got her right, and Duke stood over her, his face split in a terrible smile. "Told you," he said softly. "Told you you'd regret it." Ava bucked and twisted, but they had her held fast. The concrete burned through her uniform, the heat so intense it felt like she was lying on a stovetop. Sweat ran into her eyes, blurring her vision. She could hear her radio crackling from somewhere nearby, dispatch trying to reach her, asking for her status, but she couldn't get to it. 2 years, Duke said, kneeling down beside her. His fingers gripped the collar of her uniform, and she heard fabric tear. 2 years I waited for this. You took everything from me, officer. My freedom, my business, my reputation. Now I'm going to take something from you. Terror flooded through Ava like ice water. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about degradation, about breaking her in the worst way possible. She opened her mouth to scream, to call for help, but Tony's hand clamped over her face, cutting off the sound. "Nobody's coming," Duke whispered, his breath hot on her face. "Nobody even knows we're back here. This is just you and us, officer, finally getting what you deserve." Ava's mind raced, searching for a way out, for anything that could save her. She'd been trained for this: escape, an evasion, defensive tactics. But training didn't account for the sheer panic that froze her muscles, the horror that made it hard to think. She was going to die here, behind this forgotten gas station, and nobody would know until it was too late. The sun beat down mercilessly, the concrete burned her back, and 3 men held her down, their intentions clear in their eyes. Then she heard it, a small voice, high and scared, drifting around the corner of the building. "Dad, that lady needs help." For Caleb Stone, it had been a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, right up until it wasn't. He'd woken up at 6, same as always, made breakfast for Mason, scrambled eggs and toast, his son's favorite, and driven him to summer day camp at the community center. Then he'd spent the morning at Stone's auto repair, the small garage he'd inherited from his father, working on Mrs. Henderson's Buick and trying to figure out what was causing the mysterious rattle in young Tommy Chen's Honda Civic. Caleb had been a mechanic his whole adult life. His father had taught him everything: how to diagnose an engine problem by sound alone, how to rebuild a carburetor, how to make do with less when money was tight. The garage wasn't fancy, wasn't even particularly profitable, but it was honest work, and it kept food on the table for him and Mason. Mason, his boy, his whole world. Caleb had never planned on being a single father. When Sarah got pregnant 7 years ago, they'd been so happy, so ready to start their family. They'd painted the nursery together, picked out names, attended Lamaze classes. But complications during delivery had stolen Sarah from him, leaving him with a newborn son and a grief so deep he thought it might swallow him whole. He'd almost let it. For those first few months, Caleb had gone through the motions like a zombie, feeding Mason, changing diapers, rocking him to sleep, all while feeling like he was drowning. His father had moved in to help, had kept the garage running while Caleb learned how to be a dad. And slowly, day by day, Mason had pulled him back to the land of the living. Because when you had a child depending on you, you didn't get to check out. You didn't get to give up. You got up every morning and you did the work, even when it hurt. Now Mason was 7 years old, bright, curious, a little shy, and everything good in Caleb's life. They were a team, just the two of them. Caleb worked while Mason was at camp, picked him up in the afternoons, and they spent their evenings together: dinner, homework help, reading books before bed. It wasn't the life Caleb had imagined, but it was a good life, an honest life. Today, Caleb had picked Mason up early from camp because they needed to drive out to Carson City for supplies, specialty parts for a transmission job that couldn't wait. The drive would take them most of the afternoon, which meant they'd be on Highway 12 during the hottest part of the day. "Dad, can we get slushies?" Mason asked from the passenger seat, his legs swinging because they couldn't quite reach the floor of Caleb's old Ford F-150. "Maybe on the way back," Caleb said, keeping his eyes on the shimmering road ahead. "If you're good." "I'm always good," Caleb smiled. "That's true, buddy. You are." The truck's AC had died last summer, and Caleb hadn't gotten around to fixing it yet. The cobbler's children have no shoes, as his father used to say. They drove with the windows down, hot wind whipping through the cab, the radio playing country music low. Mason hummed along, not knowing the words but making up his own. Something about cowboys and dinosaurs that made Caleb's heart swell with love. This was his life. Simple, quiet, good. When the gas gauge dipped toward empty, Caleb pulled off at Desert Stop. He'd filled up here before. The pumps were old but functional, and the prices were usually a few cents cheaper than the stations closer to town. The place looked even more run down than last time, but that didn't matter. Gas was gas. "Can I come out?" Mason asked as Caleb pulled up to a pump. "Sure, but stay close, okay? Don't wander." "Okay, Dad." Caleb climbed out, feeling the heat immediately soak into his work shirt. He was a big man, 6'2" and solid, with hands calloused from years of working with tools. His dark hair was getting too long, touched with gray at the temples. He needed a haircut, but kept putting it off, and his face had the weathered look of someone who spent their days working hard and their nights falling asleep exhausted. He started the pump and leaned against the truck, watching Mason explore the immediate area around them. His son was fascinated by everything, the way the heat made the air shimmer, a beetle crawling across the concrete, the faded advertisements painted on the station's windows. That's when Mason wandered toward the corner of the building. "Mason, not too far," Caleb called. "I'm just looking," Mason called back, disappearing around the side. Caleb wasn't worried. The station was empty except for them and one other vehicle, a police cruiser parked at an odd angle near a white van. The cop was probably inside the station, dealing with paperwork or getting coffee. Everything seemed quiet, normal. The pump clicked off. Caleb replaced the nozzle and was reaching for his wallet when he heard Mason's voice, small and scared. "Dad." Something in that tone made Caleb's blood run cold. It was the voice Mason used when he'd had a nightmare, or when he'd gotten hurt and was trying to be brave. Caleb was around the corner in 3 long strides. Mason was standing at the back corner of the building, his eyes wide, one small hand pointing toward the rear of the station. "Dad, that lady needs help." Caleb followed his son's gaze and felt the world snap into sharp, terrible focus. Behind the gas station, 3 men had a woman pinned to the ground. Even from this distance, Caleb could see it was a police officer. He recognized the uniform, now torn and disheveled. She was fighting, trying to break free, but one man had his hand over her mouth, another held her arms, and the third was kneeling beside her, his intentions clear in the way he moved, in the violence radiating from the scene. Time seemed to slow down. Caleb was aware of everything at once, the heat of the sun on his neck, the sound of the wind, Mason's frightened breathing beside him, and the terrible understanding of what he was witnessing. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't an arrest. This was 3 men attacking a police officer, and if he didn't do something right now, something terrible was going to happen. Every survival instinct Caleb had screamed at him to get back in the truck, to get Mason to safety, to drive away and call for help. He wasn't a hero. He was a mechanic, a single father, just a regular guy trying to get through life without trouble. He wasn't trained for this. He didn't have a weapon. He had no business getting involved in whatever this was. But he looked down at Mason, at his son's frightened face, and knew he couldn't walk away. Because what kind of man would he be if he did? What kind of father? What would he tell Mason later, that they saw someone in trouble and did nothing? That when evil was happening right in front of them, they turned their backs? No. No, he couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. Caleb knelt down, putting his hands on Mason's shoulders, looking his son straight in the eye. "Mason, listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice steady despite the fear flooding his system. "I need you to go back to the truck right now. Get inside, lock all the doors, and don't come out for anyone except me. Do you understand?" Mason's lip trembled. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to help that lady, but I need to know you're safe first. Can you do that for me, buddy? Can you be brave?" Mason nodded, tears starting to track down his cheeks, but he didn't argue. "Good kid. Brave kid." "Okay, Dad." "Here." Caleb pressed the truck keys into Mason's small hand. "Lock the doors. If anything bad happens, if I don't come back in a few minutes, you call 911 on my phone. It's in the console. Can you remember that?" "Call 911, Mason whispered. "That's right. Now go, fast as you can." Caleb watched his son run back toward the front of the station, his little legs pumping, and then he turned back to the scene behind the building. The woman, the officer, was still fighting, but she was weakening. The man kneeling beside her had torn her uniform further, and her muffled screams were barely audible under the hand covering her mouth. Caleb's hands clenched into fists. He'd been in exactly 2 fights in his entire life. One in high school over a girl, one in his 20s at a bar when someone got too drunk and too aggressive. He'd won the first and lost the second, and both times he'd walked away thinking fighting was stupid and brutal, and something to be avoided at all costs. But this wasn't about fighting. This was about stopping something evil. He started walking toward them, his work boots crunching on gravel. The heat radiating off the asphalt made everything feel unreal, like he was moving through a dream or a nightmare. His heart hammered so hard he could feel it in his throat, taste copper on his tongue. But he kept walking. 20 feet away, 15, 10. The man kneeling, the leader, Caleb sensed, looked up and saw him. For a moment their eyes met, and Caleb saw surprise flicker across the man's face, then calculation, then contempt. "This ain't your business, friend," the man said, his hand still gripping the officer's torn uniform. "Keep walking." "Let her go," Caleb said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, flat, cold, nothing like his usual tone. "Right now," the man laughed. "Or what? You gonna make us? Look around, hero. There's 3 of us and 1 of you. Do the math." "I can count just fine," Caleb said, still advancing. 5 feet away now, close enough to see the terror in the officer's eyes, the tears mixing with sweat on her face, the way her chest heaved as she struggled to breathe under the hand covering her mouth. Close enough to see that if he didn't act right now, he'd be too late. "Last chance. Let her go." The man stood up, releasing the officer, and Caleb got his first good look at him. Tall, prison-hard, with tattoos snaking up his neck and murder in his eyes. "You picked the wrong day to play hero, old man." Old man. Caleb was 34, but he'd been called worse. Mason's watching, Caleb thought, and that single thought crystallized everything. His son was in the truck, watching through the window, seeing what his father would do when faced with evil. And whatever happened in the next few minutes would teach Mason a lesson about what kind of man to be, about when to stand up and when to walk away. Sarah would have wanted him to walk away, to stay safe for Mason's sake. But Sarah wasn't here, and Caleb knew with absolute certainty that if he walked away now, he'd never be able to look his son in the eye again. "Then I guess I picked wrong," Caleb said, and swung. His fist connected with the tattooed man's jaw with a crack that Caleb felt all the way up his arm. The man, Duke, though Caleb didn't know his name yet, stumbled backward, shock and pain flashing across his face. For a split second, everybody froze, the violence so sudden it seemed to pause reality itself. Then all hell broke loose. The stocky one, Tony, released the officer's arm and came at Caleb like a charging bull. Caleb barely had time to set his feet before Tony crashed into him, driving him backward into the station wall. Pain exploded across Caleb's back as he hit the concrete, but he kept his hands up, blocking the punch Tony threw at his face. Caleb had spent his life working with his hands, building strength through endless hours of turning wrenches, lifting engines, handling heavy tools. Those hands weren't trained to fight, but they were strong, and they were fast. He caught Tony's next punch, twisted, and drove his elbow into the man's temple. Tony's eyes rolled back, and he dropped like a stone. 1 down, 2 to go. The officer, Ava, though Caleb didn't know her name yet either, scrambled to her feet, gasping for air. Blood trickled from her split lip, and her uniform was torn, but her eyes were clear and focused. She spotted her service weapon on the ground 5 feet away and dove for it. But Marcus, the youngest of the 3, quick and vicious, got there first. He kicked the gun away, sending it skittering across the concrete, and turned on Ava with a knife that seemed to appear from nowhere, the blade catching the sunlight. "Cop, bitch!" Marcus snarled, slashing at her. Ava threw herself backward, the knife missing her throat by inches. Marcus advanced, grinning, and Caleb saw how this was going to end. The officer was exhausted, unarmed, and Marcus had the reach advantage with that blade. She dodged once, maybe twice more, but eventually he'd get her. Not on Caleb's watch. He charged Marcus from the side, hitting him low and hard. a tackle that would have made his high school football coach proud. They went down together in a tangle of limbs, hitting the burning concrete with enough force to drive the air from Caleb's lungs. The knife flew from Marcus's hand, and they both scrambled for it. Marcus got there first. He snatched up the knife and swung wildly, the blade opening a line of fire across Caleb's shoulder. Pain, bright and sharp, but Caleb had broken ribs falling off a ladder once, had burned his hand on an exhaust manifold badly enough to scar. He knew pain, knew how to push through it. He grabbed Marcus's wrist, slamming it against the concrete once, twice, 3 times until the knife fell again. Then he drove his fist into Marcus's face, felt something crunch, nose maybe, and hit him again for good measure. Marcus went limp beneath him. 2 down, 1 to go. Caleb looked up, breathing hard, and found Duke Fallon staring at him with a mixture of shock and rage. Blood dripped from Duke's split lip where Caleb's first punch had landed, and his eyes promised murder. "You made a big mistake," Duke said quietly. "Wouldn't be my first," Caleb shot back, pushing himself to his feet. Every muscle screamed in protest. His shoulder burned where the knife had cut him, and his back felt like one giant bruise from hitting the wall. But he was upright, and he was between Duke and the officer, and that was all that mattered. Duke reached behind his back, and Caleb's heart stopped. Gun. Duke was going for a gun. But before Duke could draw, a voice rang out across the parking lot, clear, strong, and backed by the full authority of the law. "Freeze! Police! Put your hands up!" 2 patrol cars had arrived, lights flashing, sirens wailing. 4 officers spilled out, weapons drawn, surrounding the scene. Backup had finally arrived. Duke looked at the officers, then at Caleb, his hand still behind his back. For a moment that stretched into eternity, Caleb thought Duke might actually try it, might draw his weapon and go down fighting rather than go back to prison. "Don't," Caleb said softly. "It's over." Something in Duke's eyes shifted. The rage faded, replaced by cold calculation. His hand moved away from his back, slowly, carefully, and he raised both hands. "On the ground! Now!" one of the officers shouted. Duke dropped to his knees, then to his stomach, hands behind his head. The officers swarmed in, cuffing him, reading him his rights. Other officers secured Tony and Marcus, who were both conscious but dazed, blood dripping from their faces. It was over. Really, truly over. Caleb's legs suddenly felt like water. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall, and became aware of the world coming back into focus. The heat, the pain, the sound of sirens and shouting officers, and his own ragged breathing. "Dad!" Mason came running around the corner, ignoring Caleb's earlier instructions to stay in the truck, his small face streaked with tears. "Dad, you're bleeding!" Caleb looked down at his shoulder, at the blood soaking through his work shirt, and felt a distant surprise. "It's okay, buddy. Just a scratch. I'm okay." "You said to stay in the truck," Mason sobbed, throwing his arms around Caleb's legs. "But I saw the police come, and I got scared, and—" "Shh. It's all right." Caleb knelt down, ignoring the way the movement made his shoulder scream in protest, and hugged his son tight. "You did great. You were so brave. I'm proud of you." "Sir? Sir, I need you to sit down." Caleb looked up to find a young paramedic standing over him, medical kit in hand. Behind her, Officer Ava Merritt was talking to one of the other officers, gesturing emphatically, her torn uniform held together with one hand. Even from here, even in her disheveled state, Caleb could see the steel in her spine, the strength that had kept her fighting against 3 men. "I'm fine," Caleb said automatically. "You're bleeding and probably concussed," the paramedic said firmly. "Sit down before you fall down." "Listen to her, Dad," Mason said, his voice still shaky but trying to sound grown up. "You need a Band-Aid." Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the adrenaline crash making his hands shake, Caleb laughed. Okay, you're right." He let the paramedic guide him to sit on the bumper of an ambulance that had just arrived. She cut away his blood-soaked shirt, revealing the knife wound across his shoulder, long but shallow, more dramatic-looking than actually dangerous. As she cleaned and bandaged it, Caleb watched the scene unfold around him. Duke, Tony, and Marcus were being loaded into separate patrol cars, their hands cuffed behind their backs. Crime scene tape was going up around the back of the gas station. An officer was photographing everything, the torn uniform on the ground, the service weapon, the spots of blood on the concrete that was already baked dry by the relentless sun. And Officer Merritt was walking toward him. She'd wrapped herself in someone's jacket to cover her torn uniform, and someone else had given her a bottle of water, which she clutched like a lifeline. Her face was pale beneath the bruises starting to form, and she moved carefully, like someone who'd taken a beating. But her eyes were clear and focused as she stopped in front of Caleb. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two strangers brought together by violence, connected now by something neither of them had words for. "You saved my life," Ava said finally, her voice rough. You didn't have to. You didn't have to do any of that. But you did." Caleb glanced at Mason, who was sitting beside him on the ambulance bumper, small and scared and trying to be brave. "My boy saw you. He said you needed help. I couldn't walk away." Ava's eyes moved to Mason, and something in her expression softened. "You have a good dad," she told him. Mason nodded solemnly. "He's the best dad." "What's your name?" Ava asked Caleb. "Caleb Stone. This is Mason." "Officer Ava Merritt." She held out her hand, and Caleb shook it, feeling the strength in her grip despite everything she'd been through. "I'm going to need to get your statement, but thank you." "Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it, but thank you." "You fought hard," Caleb said. "You didn't give up. That took courage." "Courage?" Ava laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I was terrified. I thought—" She swallowed hard, not finishing the sentence, but Caleb understood. He'd seen her eyes when he'd first arrived, had seen the terror and helplessness there. "But you kept fighting anyway," Caleb said gently. "That's what courage is." More officers were arriving now, and a detective in plain clothes was taking charge of the scene. Someone called for Ava, needing her to identify evidence, to give her initial statement. She nodded at them but turned back to Caleb first. "I need to go deal with all this. But thank you, Caleb Stone. You're a good man." She walked away, back straight despite the pain she had to be in, every inch a cop, even in her torn uniform and borrowed jacket. Caleb watched her go, feeling the weight of what had happened starting to settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. "Mr. Stone?" The detective approached, notebook in hand. "I'm Detective Sarah Morrison. I need to get your statement about what happened here." "Of course. Can you start from the beginning? What brought you to this location?" Caleb told the story. The stop for gas, Mason wandering to the corner, what he'd seen, the decision to intervene. He tried to be clear and factual, but it all felt surreal, like he was describing something that had happened to someone else. The detective listened, taking notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "And you engaged 3 suspects physically, despite being outnumbered and aware they might be armed?" Morrison asked, her voice neutral but her eyes sharp. "They were attacking Officer Merritt," Caleb said simply. "Someone had to stop them." "You could have been killed, Mr. Stone." "I know." Caleb looked at Mason, who was being quietly entertained by one of the paramedics with a bag of medical supplies and a story about the time she'd helped deliver a baby in an ambulance. "But I couldn't let my son watch someone get hurt and do nothing. What kind of lesson would that teach him?" Morrison's expression softened slightly. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Probably a bit of both," Caleb admitted. They talked for another 20 minutes, Morrison taking down every detail, having Caleb walk her through the fight step by step. By the time they finished, the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, the brutal heat finally beginning to ease. The scene was under control, the suspects were gone, the evidence was tagged, and the gas station owner had finally appeared, looking shell-shocked at what had happened at his business. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to sign your formal statement," Morrison said, handing Caleb her card. "And we may need you to testify when this goes to trial." "Whatever you need," Caleb said. "Officer Merritt was lucky you were here today. We all were." Morrison paused, then added, "For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Not everyone would have." After Morrison left, Caleb sat on the ambulance bumper with Mason, watching the last of the police activity wind down. The paramedic had finished with his shoulder, 12 stitches, a tetanus shot, and strict instructions to watch for signs of infection. "He'd have a scar," she said, but it would heal clean if he took care of it. Dad, Mason said softly, were you scared? Caleb thought about lying, about trying to seem strong and fearless. But that wasn't honest, and he'd always tried to be honest with his son. Yeah, buddy, I was really scared. But you helped anyway. Yeah. Why? Such a simple question, such a complicated answer. How do you explain to a 7-year-old about moral responsibility, about the kind of man you want to be, about how some things are more important than fear? Because sometimes, Caleb said slowly, we see someone who needs help, and we're the only ones there to help them. And even if it's scary, even if it's dangerous, we help anyway. Because that's what good people do. They help. Mason thought about this for a long moment. Like superheroes? Kind of, except superheroes aren't real. They're just regular people who decide to do the right thing even when it's hard. You're a superhero, Dad. Caleb pulled his son close, feeling the weight of the day settling on him like a blanket. His shoulder throbbed, his back ached, his hands were scraped and bruised, but Mason was safe, Officer Merritt was safe, and the bad guys were in custody. That had to be enough. Come on, he said, standing up carefully. Let's go home. They walked back to the truck together, hand in hand. The keys were still in the ignition where Mason had left them, the truck unlocked just like Caleb had told him. Good kid. Brave kid. The best kid. As Caleb pulled out of the gas station parking lot, he caught one last glimpse of Officer Merritt in his rearview mirror. She was standing by her cruiser, watching him go, and she raised one hand in a small wave. Caleb waved back. Then they were on Highway 12, heading back toward town, the desert landscape rolling past in shades of gold and red as the sun continued its descent. Mason fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the stress and fear of the day, his head lolling against the window. Caleb drove in silence, his mind replaying everything that had happened. He'd done the right thing, he knew that, but he also knew how easily it could have gone wrong. If backup hadn't arrived when it did, if Duke had pulled that gun a few seconds earlier, if the knife had cut deeper, Mason could have been left without a father, just like Caleb had been left without Sarah. The thought made his hands tighten on the steering wheel. He'd been reckless, maybe. Foolish, probably. But he couldn't regret it, because some things were worth the risk. Some things mattered more than personal safety. Like teaching your son what it means to be a good man. Like standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves. Like refusing to let evil win just because fighting it is dangerous. The sun was setting as they reached the outskirts of town, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Caleb glanced over at Mason, still sleeping peacefully, and felt a surge of love so strong it was almost painful. I love you, buddy, he whispered, more than anything in this world. Mason didn't hear him, but that was okay. Caleb would make sure he knew it every single day. Because tomorrow wasn't promised. Caleb had learned that lesson the hard way, and every moment with his son was precious. They drove through town as the streetlights flickered on, past the familiar landmarks, the grocery store where they shopped, the park where Mason played, the elementary school he'd start attending in the fall. Home. Normal. Safe. Caleb pulled into the driveway of their small house, the one he'd bought with Sarah when they'd first gotten married. It wasn't much. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a yard that needed mowing, but it was theirs. Mason, wake up! We're home! Mason stirred, blinking sleepily. Did we get the parts from Carson City? Caleb laughed, the sound surprising him. With everything that had happened, he'd completely forgotten about the transmission job, about the entire reason they'd been on Highway 12 in the first place. No, buddy, we didn't make it to Carson City today, but that's okay. We'll go tomorrow. Okay, Dad. They went inside into the cool dimness of the house. Caleb made dinner, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, comfort food that required minimal effort, and they ate together at the kitchen table. Mason chatted about day camp, about the craft project they'd made, about his friend Tommy's pet lizard, carefully not talking about what had happened at the gas station. After dinner, Caleb helped Mason with his bath, read him 2 chapters of their current book, a fantasy adventure about a boy wizard, and tucked him into bed. Dad? Mason said as Caleb was turning out the light. Yeah? That lady, the police lady, she's okay, right? She's okay. She's tough. She'll be fine. Good. Mason was quiet for a moment. I'm glad you helped her. Me too, buddy. Me too. I love you, Dad. I love you more. Impossible, Mason said, grinning, and then he was asleep, his chest rising and falling with the easy breath of childhood. Caleb stood in the doorway for a long time, watching his son sleep, feeling the full weight of the day finally crash over him like a wave. He'd been running on adrenaline for hours, but now, in the quiet safety of home, the reality of what had happened hit him. He could have died today, could have left Mason alone. And for what? To save a stranger? But even as the thought crossed his mind, Caleb knew the answer. Yes. Yes, for that. Because Mason was watching, because the world was full of darkness, and the only way to fight it was by being a light, even if that light was small and scared and didn't know what it was doing. Sarah would have been proud, he thought, or maybe she would have been furious with him for risking his life. Probably both. I miss you, he whispered to the empty hallway, to the ghost of his wife who lived in every corner of this house. I wish you were here. But she wasn't, and wishing wouldn't change that. All he could do was keep moving forward, keep being the best father he could be, keep teaching Mason how to be a good man in a world that sometimes seemed determined to reward the opposite. Caleb went to his own bedroom, wincing as he peeled off his ruined shirt. The paramedics had given him a spare to drive home in, but blood had soaked through to his skin. He looked at himself in the mirror, at the white bandage covering his shoulder, at the bruises already forming on his ribs and back, at the scrapes on his knuckles. He looked like he'd been in a war, felt like it too. But they'd won. Officer Merritt was safe, the bad guys were in custody, and Mason had learned that his father was someone who stood up for others, someone who did the right thing even when it was hard. That had to count for something. Caleb took a long, hot shower, careful to keep his bandaged shoulder dry, and felt the last of the adrenaline finally drain away, leaving him exhausted to his bones. He dried off, pulled on clean clothes, and collapsed onto his bed. Sleep came quickly, dreamless and deep, the sleep of someone who'd given everything they had and had nothing left. And tomorrow, Caleb Stone would wake up and go back to being a mechanic, a father, a regular guy living a regular life in a small town. But tonight, for one night, he'd been something more. He'd been the hero his son needed him to be, and that was enough. The police station was chaos when Ava arrived. Officers crowded the bullpen, their voices overlapping as they discussed the arrest, the evidence, the sheer audacity of Duke Fallon attacking a cop in broad daylight. Captain Morrison, no relation to Detective Sarah Morrison, stood at the center of it all, his weathered face grim as he coordinated with the district attorney's office. When he saw Ava walk through the door, still wearing someone's borrowed jacket over her torn uniform, his expression softened into something close to relief. Merritt, my office. Now. Ava followed him through the maze of desks, feeling the eyes of her fellow officers tracking her movement. Some looked sympathetic, others looked curious. A few looked at her the way cops looked at victims, and that made something hot and angry twist in her chest. She wasn't a victim. She'd fought back. She'd survived. Morrison closed the office door behind them and gestured to a chair. Sit down before you fall down. I'm fine, Captain. That's an order, officer. Ava sat. Now that the adrenaline was fully gone, her body was cataloging every injury. The bruises on her arms where Tony and Marcus had held her, the split lip that throbbed with each heartbeat, the raw scrapes on her back from the concrete. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, no matter how hard she tried to control them. Morrison opened a desk drawer and pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. He poured 2 fingers into each glass and pushed one across the desk to Ava. I don't drink on duty, sir. You're not on duty. You're on administrative leave as of right now, effective immediately. Ava's head snapped up. What? No, Captain, I need to work. You need to take some time, Morrison interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. Standard protocol after an officer is assaulted. You know this, Merritt. You'll meet with the department psychologist. You'll give your full statement to IA, and when everyone agrees you're ready, you come back, not before. How long? Minimum 2 weeks. Could be longer, depending on what the psych eval says. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of sitting at home, replaying what happened, feeling Duke's hands on her uniform, feeling Tony's hand over her mouth, feeling the helplessness of being pinned down while Ava grabbed the glass and downed the whiskey in one burning gulp. Morrison nodded approvingly and refilled her glass. Tell me what happened out there. All of it. So Ava told him. She started with spotting the van, the expired registration, the moment she'd realized it was Duke Fallon behind the wheel. She described the chase around the gas station, the realization that she'd put herself in a tactical nightmare with no cover and no backup. She told him about the attack, about fighting and losing, about the terrible moment when she'd understood what they intended to do to her. And then she told him about Caleb Stone. He just appeared, Ava said, her voice rough. 1 second I was sure I was going to die, and the next this guy was there, throwing punches like some kind of action movie hero. Except he wasn't a hero. He was just a dad with a kid in his truck. Civilian with no tactical training takes on 3 violent felons, Morrison mused. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Both, probably. But he saved my life, Captain. If he hadn't been there... Ava's voice caught, and she hated herself for it. She was a cop. She was supposed to be tough. If he hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. You did everything right, Merritt. You called for backup. You attempted to de-escalate. They ambushed you with superior numbers. There's no shame in that. Doesn't feel that way. I know, but it's the truth. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Duke Fallon is going away for a long time. Assault on a police officer, attempted sexual assault, weapons charges. The DA is building a case that'll put him behind bars until he's an old man. His buddies are already talking, trying to make deals. You did good work today. Caleb Stone did good work. I just survived. That's more than some officers manage, Morrison said quietly, and Ava knew he was thinking about Officer Rodriguez, who'd been killed in the line of duty 3 years ago during what should have been a routine domestic disturbance call. Take the win, Merritt. You're alive. The bad guys are in custody, and you get to go home tonight. That's a win. Ava nodded, not trusting her voice. Now go home. Get some rest. Come back Monday to meet with Dr. Chen. And Merritt? Morrison waited until she met his eyes. You're one of the best officers I've got. Don't let this take that away from you. The borrowed jacket suddenly felt too heavy, too hot. Ava stood abruptly. Permission to leave, Captain? Granted. And Merritt? Lock your doors tonight. Take your service weapon home. Duke's crew might have friends who don't know they're already in custody. The thought hadn't even occurred to her, and the fact that it hadn't made Ava realize just how shaken she really was. She nodded and left Morrison's office, walking through the station with her head high, even though she wanted to run. She needed to get home, needed to be alone, needed to process everything that had happened before she fell apart in front of her colleagues. She made it to her car, her personal vehicle, since the cruiser was still at the gas station, tagged as evidence, before the shaking got worse. Her hands fumbled with the keys, dropping them twice before she managed to unlock the door. She slid into the driver's seat and just sat there, breathing hard, feeling the walls of the car close in around her. Duke's face swam in her memory, his hands on her uniform. The weight of 3 men holding her down, the certainty that she was about to be violated, destroyed, left broken on the hot concrete behind a forgotten gas station. And then Caleb's face, replacing Duke's. The mechanic with gentle eyes and bruised knuckles, with a 7-year-old son who'd pointed and said, "That lady needs help," with the courage to walk toward danger when every instinct must have screamed at him to run. Ava started the car and drove home on autopilot, barely registering the familiar streets. She lived in a small apartment on the east side of town, 1 bedroom, functional kitchen, living room with furniture she'd bought secondhand. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and right now it represented safety. She locked the door behind her, 1 deadbolt, 2 chain locks, the security bar she never usually bothered with, and finally let herself break down. The tears came hard and ugly, racking her body with sobs she couldn't control. She cried for the fear, for the helplessness, for the violation of being attacked while wearing the uniform that was supposed to command respect. She cried for the little girl she'd been, who dreamed of being a cop like her father, who thought the badge would keep her safe. She cried for the innocence she'd lost today, the belief that she could handle anything as long as she followed her training. Training hadn't saved her. A stranger with no training had. Eventually, the tears stopped, leaving her hollow and exhausted. Ava dragged herself to the bathroom and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her face was a mess, split lip swelling, bruise forming on her left cheekbone, eyes red and puffy from crying. Her uniform was still torn, the borrowed jacket hanging open to reveal the damaged fabric beneath. She stripped off the uniform slowly, each movement reminding her of new bruises and scrapes. The clothes went into a plastic bag. Evidence, probably, though the attack had been well documented by photos at the scene. She stood under the shower and let the water run as hot as she could stand, scrubbing her skin until it was red and raw, trying to wash away the memory of Duke's hands, Tony's hand over her mouth, Marcus's knife slashing toward her throat. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her softest robe, her phone was ringing. She checked the caller ID, her mother. Of course. The department would have already notified her family that she'd been involved in a serious incident. Mom. Ava, sweetheart, are you okay? Captain Morrison called and said there was an attack, that you were hurt. I'm fine, Mom. Just some bruises. Just some... Ava Marie Merritt, don't you dare minimize this. Morrison said 3 men attacked you, that you could have been... Her mother's voice broke. But I wasn't, Ava said firmly. Someone helped me. A civilian. We got them all in custody. Thank God. Thank God you're safe. Her mother was crying now, and Ava felt her own tears threatening again. Do you want me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. No, I mean, thank you, but I need some time alone. I need to process. Are you sure? Because I really think, Mom, please, I love you, but I need to be alone right now. Her mother was silent for a long moment. Okay, but I'm checking on you tomorrow, and if you don't answer your phone, I'm coming over with a key. Deal. After she hung up, Ava turned off her phone entirely. She couldn't handle any more calls, any more concern, any more people treating her like she was made of glass. She made herself eat something, a sandwich she barely tasted, and then crawled into bed even though it was only 8 o'clock. Sleep didn't come. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the attack. What could she have done differently? Should she have waited for backup? Should she have approached the van from a different angle? Should she have recognized the tactical disadvantage of going behind the building? But the truth was, even with perfect tactics, she'd been outnumbered and outmatched. 3 men, all with violent criminal records, all with grudges against her specifically. She'd had no chance, except she'd had Caleb Stone, a mechanic, a single father, a man who'd put himself between her and danger without hesitation, who'd fought 3 violent criminals with nothing but his fists and his courage, who'd gotten stabbed protecting a complete stranger. Ava rolled over, pulling her knees to her chest. She needed to thank him properly. The brief words at the scene hadn't been enough. He'd saved her life, had risked his own life and left his son potentially fatherless. And all she'd said was thank you. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she'd find him and say what needed to be said. The decision made, Ava finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, her dreams full of heat and fear, and a small boy's voice saying, "That lady needs help." The next morning arrived too bright and too early. Ava woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and her body screaming in protest at every movement. The bruises had ripened overnight, painting her arms and ribs in shades of purple and yellow. Her lip had swollen to twice its normal size, and the scrapes on her back stuck to her sheets, pulling painfully when she sat up. She felt like she'd been hit by a truck, which, considering she'd fought 3 men and lost, wasn't far from the truth. Coffee helped a little. Ibuprofen helped more. By the time she'd showered and dressed in civilian clothes, jeans and a soft t-shirt that didn't press on her bruises, she almost felt human again. Almost. She turned her phone back on and immediately regretted it. 17 missed calls. 34 text messages. Her mother, her father, her brother, her partner Jenkins, Captain Morrison, 3 other officers from her shift, and 2 numbers she didn't recognize. Everyone wanted to know if she was okay, if she needed anything, when she was coming back to work. Ava ignored all of them except one, a text from Detective Sarah Morrison that simply read, "Need your formal statement. Come by the station when you're ready. Take your time." She texted back, "This afternoon. Need to do something first." The detective responded immediately. "Copy that. Be safe." Ava grabbed her keys and headed out, wincing as she climbed into her car. The drive across town took 15 minutes, giving her plenty of time to second-guess what she was about to do. Showing up at Caleb Stone's home unannounced might be weird, might be crossing some kind of professional boundary, but she needed to do this, needed to look him in the eye and tell him what his actions had meant. Stone's Auto Repair was easy to find. A small garage on the edge of town, the kind of place that had been family-owned for generations. The building was old but well-maintained, with a hand-painted sign that read, "Stone's Auto Repair. Honest work, fair prices. Since 1987. Two cars were parked in the lot, and the bay doors were open, revealing a lift with a Honda Civic suspended above the ground. Ava parked and got out, suddenly nervous. What if he didn't want to see her? What if being reminded of yesterday was too much? She was still debating whether to go inside when a figure emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. Caleb Stone looked different in the daylight, outside the context of violence. He was tall and solid, with dark hair touched with gray and eyes that were surprisingly kind. He wore work clothes, jeans and a button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing the white bandage on his left shoulder. When he saw her, he stopped, surprise flickering across his face. "Officer Merritt." "Ava, please, I'm on leave right now." "Ava." He said her name carefully, like he was testing how it felt. "Are you okay?" "I should be asking you that. You're the one who got stabbed." Caleb glanced at his bandaged shoulder and shrugged, then winced at the movement. 12 stitches. Doctor said I was lucky it wasn't deeper. I'll have a cool scar to show Mason when he's older." "Mason, your son, is he—" "He's fine. Didn't sleep great last night, had some nightmares, but he's resilient. Kids are tougher than we think." Caleb studied her face, taking in the split lip and bruised cheek. "You look like you could use some coffee." "I probably look like I got hit by a truck." "I wasn't going to say it, but—" A small smile tugged at his mouth, and despite everything, Ava felt herself smile back. "Coffee sounds good." Caleb led her into the garage's small office, a cramped space with a desk covered in invoices, an ancient coffee maker, and a collection of auto parts catalogs. He poured 2 cups of coffee that was probably strong enough to strip paint and handed her one. "Sorry about the accommodations. Not exactly the Ritz." "It's perfect." Ava took a sip and nearly choked on the strength of it. "Wow, that's really strong coffee." "Mechanic coffee. It's either this or we fall asleep under a car and die when the lift fails." Caleb leaned against the desk, studying her. "So, what brings you by? I figured I'd hear from the detective if you needed anything else from me." "I came to thank you. Properly, I mean. Not the 2-second version I gave you yesterday while everything was crazy." Ava set down her coffee cup, suddenly finding it hard to meet his eyes. "You saved my life, Caleb. Those men, they weren't just going to beat me up. They were going to—" Her voice caught. "You know what they were going to do?" "I know." "And you stopped them. You put yourself between them and me, and you got hurt doing it, and you had your son there watching, and I needed you to know what that means, what you did, because I don't know if I said it right yesterday, and I needed you to know." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "I did what anyone would do." "No," Ava said firmly. "No, that's not true. Most people would have driven away, would have called 911 and hoped help arrived in time. You didn't. You walked toward danger and you fought 3 violent criminals with your bare hands, and you did it because your 7-year-old son saw someone in trouble and said she needed help. Mason's a good kid. And he has a good father." Ava's hands were shaking again, and she gripped the coffee cup tighter to hide it. "I've been a cop for 6 years. I've pulled over drunk drivers and broken up domestic disputes and arrested drug dealers. I thought I was tough. Thought I could handle anything. Yesterday proved me wrong." "You fought back," Caleb said. "You didn't give up, even when it was 3 against 1. That takes guts." "I was terrified." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Caleb smiled slightly. "At least, that's what my dad used to tell me. I was terrified yesterday, too.
Thought I was going to throw up or pass out or both, but I looked at Mason and I knew I couldn't let him see someone hurt without trying to help.
What kind of father would that make me? A living one. You could have been killed. So could you. That's the job you signed up for, isn't it? Putting yourself in danger to protect others. Ava nodded slowly. I guess I never thought about it from the civilian side, what it means to choose to help when you don't have to. My wife used to say everyone has a choice about the kind of person they want to be, Caleb said quietly. She died when Mason was born. Complications during delivery. And for a long time after, I was angry at the world, angry at God, angry at choices and fairness and all of it. But Mason needed me to be better than my anger, needed me to show him how to be a good man. So I try. Every day, I try. She'd be proud of you, Ava said softly. What you did yesterday, that took incredible courage. Or incredible stupidity. My dad would probably say it was both. They smiled at each other and something passed between them, an understanding maybe, or a recognition of shared trauma. They'd both been in that parking lot. They'd both faced death and survived. That created a bond, whether they wanted it or not. So what happens now? Caleb asked. With the case, I mean. Duke Fallon and his friends are facing multiple felony charges. Assault on a police officer, attempted sexual assault, weapons violations. The DA is confident they'll all do serious time. You'll probably have to testify. Whatever it takes to put them away. Detective Morrison will call you when they need you, probably in the next few days for a formal statement, then again when the trial starts. Ava hesitated. The defense attorneys might try to paint you as a vigilante. They'll say you used excessive force, that you attacked their clients without cause. Caleb's jaw tightened. They were attacking you. I know, and the evidence backs that up completely. I just wanted to warn you that it might get ugly. Defense attorneys can be creative. Let them try. I know what I saw. I know what I did. And I'd do it again. Even knowing you could have died? That Mason could have lost you? Especially knowing that. Because what's the alternative? Teaching my son that we only help people when it's convenient, when it's safe? That's not the world I want him to grow up in. Ava felt tears prickling at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of this man. She would not fall apart. You're a good person, Caleb Stone. I'm just a person, trying to do right by my kid. He picked up his coffee cup, then set it down again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you okay? Really? Because yesterday was... He trailed off, searching for words. It was bad. And I keep thinking about what almost happened, and I wonder if you're really okay or if you're just saying that because you think you have to be. No one else had asked her that. Not Morrison, not her mother, not Jenkins. They'd all asked if she was hurt, if she needed anything, if she was safe. But no one had asked if she was okay, and the honest answer was no. No, she wasn't okay. She was terrified and shaken and felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. She'd joined the force to help people, to make a difference, and yesterday she'd been the one who needed saving. It had shattered something inside her, some fundamental belief about who she was and what she was capable of. But looking at Caleb, at this mechanic who'd risked everything for a stranger, Ava found herself telling the truth. No, she said quietly. I'm not okay. I keep replaying it in my head, feeling Duke's hands on me, knowing what was about to happen. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. Caleb nodded slowly. After Sarah died, I didn't sleep for months. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in the hospital, saw the doctors working on her, saw the moment they told me she was gone. I thought I'd never feel normal again, that the grief would just swallow me whole. What changed? Time, mostly. And Mason, and realizing that what I was feeling was normal, that it was okay to not be okay. He met her eyes. What happened to you yesterday was traumatic. It's okay to be messed up about it. It's okay to be scared. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. I'm supposed to be tougher than this. I'm a cop. You are tough. You survived. You're still here. That's what matters. Ava wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that survival was enough, that she didn't have to pretend to be unaffected. But 6 years of police culture had taught her that showing weakness was dangerous, that admitting fear made her a liability. "My captain put me on leave," she said. "Mandatory 2 weeks, plus therapy. Part of me is grateful. The other part feels like I'm being punished. You're being given time to heal. That's not punishment. Feels like failure." "It's not," Caleb said firmly. "You were ambushed by 3 violent criminals. You did everything right and still got hurt. That's not failure. That's just bad luck." A timer went off somewhere in the garage, and Caleb straightened. "That's the Honda. I need to check on it." "I should go anyway. Let you get back to work." Ava stood, feeling the pull of bruised muscles. "Thank you for the coffee, and for listening." "Any time." Caleb walked her to her car. "Ava, if you need someone to talk to, someone who is there, I'm around. Not a therapist or anything, just someone who gets it." "Thank you. That means a lot." She climbed into her car, then paused with the door open. "Caleb, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you have regrets about getting involved?" Caleb thought about this for a long moment. "I regret that Mason had to see violence. I regret that I couldn't stop it sooner, that you had to go through that at all. But do I regret helping? No, not for a second." Ava nodded, something tight in her chest loosening just a fraction. "Take care of that shoulder. Take care of yourself." She drove away, watching Caleb in her rearview mirror as he stood in the parking lot, one hand raised in farewell. Something had shifted during their conversation. She wasn't okay, not yet, maybe not for a long time, but she felt less alone in her fear, less broken. The police station was busier when she arrived an hour later. Officers nodded to her as she walked through, their expressions carefully neutral. Jenkins, her partner, intercepted her before she reached Detective Morrison's office. "Merritt, how you holding up?" "I'm fine, Jenkins." "You look like hell." "Thanks. You always know what to say." Jenkins smiled, but his eyes were serious. "I mean it, though. You okay?" "Everyone keeps asking me that." "Because we care. You're one of us." He lowered his voice. "What happened out there? It could have been any of us. You got unlucky. But you're alive, and the bad guys are in jail, and that's what matters." "Is it?" Ava couldn't quite keep the bitterness out of her voice. "Because I feel like I failed, like I should have been able to handle 3 guys without needing a civilian to rescue me. 3 guys is impossible odds, especially when they ambush you. No one expects you to be Superman." Jenkins put a hand on her shoulder, careful to avoid her bruises. "Take the leave. Talk to the shrink. Come back when you're ready. We'll be here." Detective Morrison was waiting for her in interview room 2, a laptop open in front of her and a recording device on the table. She looked up when Ava entered and gestured to the chair across from her. "Thanks for coming in. I know this isn't easy. Just want to get it over with." "Understandable." Morrison started the recording device. "This is Detective Sarah Morrison conducting a follow-up interview with Officer Ava Merritt regarding the incident on Highway 12. Officer Merritt, can you state your name and badge number for the record?" Ava went through the formalities, then launched into her statement. She'd done this before, given detailed accounts of arrests, of use of force incidents, of confrontations with suspects. But this was different. This was personal in a way nothing else had ever been. She described everything methodically, trying to keep her voice steady. The traffic stop, the realization that it was Duke Fallon, the decision to proceed despite the risk, the chase around the building, the attack. "They had me pinned," Ava said, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Tony was on my left arm, Marcus on my right. He was tearing my uniform. His hands were on me. I couldn't move, couldn't fight back, couldn't even scream because Tony had his hand over my mouth." "What were you thinking in that moment?" "That I was going to die. Or worse, that no one was coming, that backup wouldn't arrive in time, that this was how it ended." Ava's voice cracked. "I was thinking about my parents, about how this would destroy them, about how Duke was going to win. And then what happened? Caleb Stone appeared. I heard a child's voice first, his son, Mason. Then Caleb came around the corner and he just started fighting. No hesitation. Duke went down first, then Tony. Marcus pulled a knife. Can you describe the altercation between Mr. Stone and the suspects? Ava walked through it step by step. Caleb's first punch dropping Duke, the fight with Tony, the moment Marcus pulled the knife and slashed Caleb's shoulder. The way Caleb had kept fighting anyway, protecting her even while bleeding. Mr. Stone engaged 3 armed suspects in hand-to-hand combat despite having no tactical training, Morrison said. That's remarkably brave, or remarkably foolish, but it saved my life. Do you believe Mr. Stone used excessive force? No, he used exactly as much force as necessary to stop 3 men from sexually assaulting and possibly killing a police officer. If anything, he showed restraint. He could have done much worse damage. Morrison nodded, making notes. And after backup arrived? Duke tried to go for his weapon. Caleb talked him down. Then your officers secured the scene. Ava took a shaky breath. Is this going to trial? Absolutely. Duke Fallon's attorney is already making noise about pleading down, but the DA isn't interested. With your testimony and Mr. Stone's plus the physical evidence, we have them cold. They're going away for a long time. Good. One more thing. Morrison closed her laptop. Off the record now. She turned off the recording device. How are you really doing? Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because we've all seen what happened to officers after traumatic incidents. Some bounce back. Others, Morrison's expression was somber. Others never really recover. I want to make sure you're in the first group. I'll be fine. Will you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone barely holding it together. Morrison's voice was gentle. There's no shame in struggling after what happened. No shame in asking for help. I have to be strong. Strength isn't the same as pretending you're not hurt. Strength is acknowledging the pain and dealing with it anyway. Ava was silent. Morrison's words echoed Caleb's, and something about that made her throat tight. 2 people who barely knew her, both telling her the same thing. Maybe they were right. I keep feeling his hands on me, Ava whispered. Keep seeing his face. Keep knowing what he was about to do. That's trauma. That's your brain trying to process something terrible. It's normal. Doesn't feel normal. No, it feels like you're broken, like you'll never be whole again. Morrison met her eyes. I was assaulted 7 years ago. Different circumstances, but the same violation, the same fear. And I'm telling you, it gets better. Not easier necessarily, but better. You learn to live with it. I didn't know. Not many people do. It's not something I advertise. Morrison leaned forward. The point is, you're not alone. You're not the first officer this has happened to, and unfortunately you won't be the last. But you can survive this. You can come back stronger. How? One day at a time. Go to therapy. Talk to people who care about you. Let yourself feel whatever you need to feel. And when you're ready, you come back and you do the job, because that's who you are. Ava nodded, not trusting her voice. Go home, Morrison said gently. Rest. Heal. We've got everything we need for now. The drive home felt longer than usual. Ava's mind was full of Morrison's words, Caleb's words, her own memories of the attack. Everything swirled together until she couldn't separate one thought from another. At home, she collapsed onto her couch and finally let herself cry again. Not the desperate, panicked tears of last night, but quieter tears. Mourning tears, maybe, for the version of herself who'd existed before yesterday. That Ava had been confident, certain of her abilities, unshakable in her belief that she could handle anything. This Ava was different, scared, uncertain. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being scared didn't make her weak. Maybe acknowledging her fear was the first step toward healing. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Checking on you. Do you need anything? Ava considered ignoring it, then thought about what Morrison and Caleb had both said. Strength wasn't pretending to be okay. Strength was asking for help when you needed it. She texted back, Can you come over? I don't want to be alone. Her mother arrived 20 minutes later with groceries and a determined expression. She swept into the apartment like a force of nature, unpacking food and making tea and generally taking charge in that way mothers do. You look terrible, she said, which was apparently the theme of the day. Thanks, Mom. I'm serious. Have you eaten? Not really. Then we're fixing that right now. Her mother bustled into the kitchen, and soon the apartment was filled with the smells of cooking, chicken soup, the kind Ava had grown up with, the kind that was supposed to cure everything. They ate together in comfortable silence, her mother not pressing for details, just being present. And gradually, Ava felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. She wasn't alone. She had people who cared about her, who would help her through this. "Mom," Ava said quietly, "yesterday I thought I was going to die." Her mother's hand covered hers, warm and solid. "I know, sweetheart. A man saved me, a civilian. He had no reason to help, but he did anyway. He fought 3 men with his bare hands because his 7-year-old son said I needed help." "Then I owe that man everything," her mother said fiercely. "Because you're my daughter, and you're here, and that's all that matters." They talked late into the evening about fear and courage, about trauma and healing, about what it meant to be strong. Her mother shared stories Ava had never heard before, about times she'd been scared, times she'd felt overwhelmed, times she'd had to ask for help. "Your father and I weren't going to tell you this," her mother said finally, "but I think you need to hear it. When he was a rookie officer, maybe 25 years ago, he responded to a domestic violence call. The suspect had a gun. He shot your father." Ava's blood ran cold. "What?" "Vest saved his life, but he was traumatized. Had nightmares for months. Almost quit the force." Her mother's voice was soft. "But he got help, went to therapy, talked to other officers who'd been through similar things, and eventually he healed enough to go back, to be the police officer he wanted to be. I never knew. He didn't want you to know, didn't want you to be scared of the job. But I think you need to know that even the strongest people struggle sometimes, that it's okay to not be okay." Ava felt tears streaming down her face again. "I'm so scared, Mom. Scared of going back. Scared that I won't be able to do the job anymore. Scared that every traffic stop will feel like that moment when Duke grabbed me." "You might be. For a while, but you're stronger than you know, Ava Marie. You survived. And you'll keep surviving." Her mother squeezed her hand. "One day at a time. That's all anyone can ask." Later, after her mother had left with promises to check in tomorrow, Ava stood at her window and looked out at the quiet street. Somewhere out there, Caleb Stone was probably tucking Mason into bed, reading him a story, being the father his son needed. Somewhere out there, Duke Fallon and his friends were sitting in jail cells, facing decades behind bars. And here, in this apartment, Ava Merritt was beginning the long process of healing. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number Detective Morrison had given her, Dr. Chen, the department psychologist. Before she could second-guess herself, she sent a text. "This is Officer Ava Merritt. Captain Morrison said I should reach out. Is there availability this week?" The response came within minutes. "I'm glad you reached out. I have an opening Thursday at 2 p.m. Does that work?" "Yes, thank you." It was a small step, maybe the first of many, but it was a step forward, and right now, that was enough. Ava set her phone aside and went to bed, and though her dreams were still troubled, though she woke twice in the night with her heart pounding, she slept. And in the morning, she'd wake up and face another day, and another after that. Because that's what survivors did. They survived, they endured, they healed, and maybe, eventually, they became whole again. 3 days after the incident, Caleb was replacing the brake pads on Mrs. Henderson's Buick when Mason appeared in the garage doorway, his backpack still on his shoulders from day camp pickup. "Dad, there's a lady here to see you." Caleb rolled out from under the car, wiping grease from his hands. "What lady?" "The police lady. From the gas station." Caleb's heart did an unexpected skip. He hadn't seen Ava since she'd stopped by the garage, hadn't expected to see her again until the trial. He stood up, suddenly aware of how he must look. Covered in grease, hair disheveled, probably smelling like motor oil and sweat. Ava stood in the parking lot looking better than she had 3 days ago. The swelling in her lip had gone down, and though the bruise on her cheek was still visible, she'd covered it with makeup. She wore jeans and a simple blue shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she was holding a casserole dish. "Hi," she said, and there was something almost shy in her voice. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "No, not at all. Just finishing up for the day?" Caleb glanced at the casserole dish. "What's that?" "Lasagna. I made too much and thought, Well, I thought maybe you and Mason might like some, as a thank you. She shifted her weight from foot to foot. Is that weird? That feels weird now that I'm saying it out loud. It's not weird, Caleb said, smiling. It's really nice. Mason, you hungry? I'm always hungry, Mason said solemnly, staring up at Ava with wide eyes. Are you the lady from the gas station, the one Dad saved? Ava knelt down to Mason's level. I am, and your dad was very brave. So were you, actually. You told him I needed help. Were you scared? Mason, Caleb warned. It's okay, Ava said softly. Yes, I was very scared, but your dad helped me and now I'm safe, because of both of you. Mason considered this seriously. Do you like dinosaurs? The abrupt change of subject made Ava laugh, a real laugh that lit up her face. I don't know much about them, but I'd love to learn. I have 17 dinosaur books. I can show you. Mason grabbed her free hand. Come on, Dad's gonna wash up and then we can eat lasagna and I'll teach you about velociraptors. And just like that, Mason was pulling Ava toward the small house that sat behind the garage. Caleb's home. Modest but comfortable. Caleb followed, shaking his head at his son's enthusiasm. Mason had always been shy around strangers, but something about Ava seemed to put him at ease. The house was nothing special. A living room with worn furniture, a kitchen that needed updating, family photos on the walls. Caleb saw Ava's eyes linger on a picture of Sarah taken when she was pregnant with Mason, her smile bright and full of life. Your wife? Ava asked quietly. Yeah, Sarah. She died when Mason was born. I'm sorry, she was beautiful. She was. Caleb took the casserole from Ava and set it on the kitchen counter. Give me 10 minutes to clean up. Mason, show Officer Merritt your dinosaurs, but don't talk her ear off. I won't, Mason promised, already pulling Ava toward his bedroom. Caleb showered quickly, scrubbing away the grease and grime of the workday, and changed into clean jeans and a t-shirt. When he emerged, he found Ava sitting cross-legged on Mason's bedroom floor, surrounded by dinosaur books and plastic figurines, while Mason explained the difference between a T-Rex and an Allosaurus with the passionate intensity only a 7-year-old could muster. And this one, Mason was saying, holding up a green plastic dinosaur, is a Stegosaurus. They had plates on their backs for defense, but some scientists think maybe they were for temperature regulation instead. Temperature regulation, Ava repeated, sounding impressed. That's a big phrase. Dad teaches me big words. He says, if you're going to know something, you should know it right. Your dad sounds smart. He is. He can fix any car ever made. And he makes really good pancakes. And he reads me stories every night, even when he's tired. Mason looked up at her with absolute seriousness. He's the best dad in the whole world. Caleb's throat tightened. He cleared it loudly. All right, paleontologist, time to wash up for dinner. We've got a guest. They ate in the small dining room, just a table with 4 chairs, though one chair had been empty since Sarah died. Ava sat in that chair, and it felt both strange and right at the same time. The lasagna was excellent, rich with cheese and perfectly seasoned, and Mason devoured 2 helpings while regaling Ava with more dinosaur facts. This is really good, Caleb said. Thank you. My mom's recipe. She says the secret is using 3 types of cheese instead of 2. Ava pushed food around her plate. I wanted to do something to thank you. I know it's not enough, not even close, but it's more than enough, Caleb interrupted. You didn't have to do anything. I did, though, because what you did, I keep thinking about it, about how you didn't hesitate, how you just walked toward danger like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. I was terrified. But you did it anyway. Ava's voice was soft. That's what courage is, right? Being scared but doing what's right anyway. Mason was listening intently. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Dad says courage is helping people even when it's hard. Your dad is very wise, Ava said, and her eyes met Caleb's across the table. After dinner, Mason insisted on showing Ava his rock collection, another passion alongside dinosaurs. While Caleb cleaned up the kitchen, he could hear them in the living room, Mason's high voice explaining the difference between sedimentary and igneous rocks, Ava asking questions that sounded genuinely interested rather than just polite. When he finished the dishes, he found them sitting on the couch together, Mason leaning against Ava like they'd known each other for years rather than less than an hour. Something about the sight made Caleb's chest ache. Mason had never known his mother, had never had a woman in his life beyond his grandmother. Seeing him so comfortable with Ava stirred feelings Caleb had buried deep: loneliness, longing, the wish that things had been different. "All right, rock scientist, it's almost bedtime," Caleb said, checking his watch. "Say thank you to Officer Merritt for visiting." "Thank you for visiting," Mason said obediently. Then, "Can you come back? I have more stuff to show you. I have a book about space and a collection of cool sticks. And, Mason, Officer Merritt is very busy." "Actually," Ava said, and there was something vulnerable in her expression, "I'd like that. If it's okay with your dad. I'm on leave from work right now, so I have plenty of time." "Really?" Mason's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Maybe I could come back this weekend. We could talk about space." "Yes!" Mason threw his arms around Ava's neck, hugging her tight. "This is the best day ever." Caleb walked Ava to her car after Mason's bedtime ritual. Teeth brushing, story time, the complicated series of stuffed animals that had to be arranged just right. The evening air was cooler than the day had been, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of desert sage. "You don't have to come back," Caleb said. "I know Mason kind of railroaded you into that." "I want to, if that's okay. I meant what I said." Ava leaned against her car. "The truth is, I've been struggling this week. Having nightmares, jumping at shadows. My therapist says it's normal trauma response, but it doesn't feel normal. It feels like I'm broken." "You're not broken." "How do you know?" "Because I've been broken. After Sarah died, I was a mess. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. My dad had to move in to help with Mason because I was barely capable of taking care of myself." Caleb met her eyes. "But I got through it. Day by day, hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute. And you will too." "What helped? Besides time?" "Having a reason to get up in the morning. For me, that was Mason. He needed me, so I had to be there for him. Even on the days when I wanted to just stay in bed and give up, I couldn't, because he deserved better than that." Caleb paused. "And talking helped. Not to a therapist, though I probably should have, but to other people who'd lost someone, knowing I wasn't alone in feeling that way." "I haven't told many people how bad it's been," Ava admitted. "My mom knows some of it. My therapist knows more. But most people, I don't want them to see me as weak. Being honest about pain isn't weakness. Try telling that to a police department. We're supposed to be tough, unshakable. Admitting you're struggling is like admitting you can't do the job." "That's stupid," Ava laughed, surprised. "Yeah, it is, but it's the culture." "Then the culture needs to change," Caleb crossed his arms. "You survived something terrible. You're dealing with the aftermath. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true. And because I think you need to hear it." They were quiet for a moment, the only sound the distant hum of traffic from the highway. Then Ava spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I keep feeling his hands on me. Duke's hands. Keep seeing his face. When I close my eyes, I'm back there, pinned to the concrete, and I can't breathe, can't move, can't—" She stopped, breathing hard. Sorry, I shouldn't dump this on you." "Yes, you should. Who else is going to understand what happened out there? I was there. I saw it. That's why I keep coming back here, I think. To the garage, to you." "Because you're the only person who really gets it." Ava looked up at him, and in the dim light from the porch, her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "Is that weird? That I feel safer talking to you, a stranger, than I do talking to people I've known for years?" "Not weird. Makes sense, actually. Shared trauma creates bonds." "Is that what this is? A bond?" Caleb thought about it. 3 days ago, he hadn't known Ava Merritt existed. Now she was standing in his driveway talking about nightmares and trauma, and it felt natural. "Right." "Yeah," he said finally. "I think it is." Ava smiled, small and tentative. "Good, because Mason's already planning our next hangout, and I don't want to disappoint him." "Just Mason?" "Well, you make pretty good company, too, for a mechanic, and you're not bad for a cop, on leave." They grinned at each other, and something shifted in the air between them. Not quite friendship yet, but the beginning of something. A connection forged in violence, but growing into something more. I should go, Ava said reluctantly. It's getting late. Drive safe. And Ava, if you need someone to talk to, even at 3 in the morning when the nightmares get bad, call me, okay? I can't ask you to cut. You're not asking. I'm offering. Caleb pulled out his phone. Give me your number. They exchanged numbers and Ava climbed into her car. As she drove away, Caleb stood in the driveway, watching her taillights disappear into the darkness, and wondered what he'd just started. Inside, Mason was supposed to be asleep, but was clearly still awake, judging by the way his bedroom light was on. Caleb pushed open the door and found his son sitting up in bed, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Can't sleep? Is Officer Ava coming back? Mason asked. On Saturday, if that's still okay with you? It's very okay. Mason hugged his dinosaur tighter. I like her, Dad. She's nice, and she's pretty, and she listens when I talk about dinosaurs. All very important qualities, Caleb agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Do you like her? The question caught Caleb off guard. Sure, she seems nice. No, I mean, do you like her, the way you liked Mom? Caleb's breath caught. Mason had never asked about this before, had never shown any interest in the idea of Caleb dating. They'd been a team of two for so long that the thought of adding someone else felt both appealing and terrifying. I just met her, buddy. It's too soon to know something like that. But you could like her. Maybe. Eventually. Mason's voice was hopeful in a way that broke Caleb's heart. Maybe. But that's not why she's coming to visit. She's coming to see you and your cool rock collection. And to talk to you. I saw you two talking outside. You smiled at her. I smile at lots of people. Not like that, you don't. Mason settled back into his pillows. I think it would be okay. If you liked her, I wouldn't be mad or sad or anything. That's good to know, son. Now get some sleep. You've got camp tomorrow. Dad? Mason's voice was small now, the bravado fading. I had a bad dream last night. About the gas station. About those bad men hurting you. Caleb's chest tightened. He'd been so focused on his own aftermath, on helping Ava, that he hadn't fully considered what Mason might be dealing with. His 7-year-old son had watched violence unfold, had seen his father get hurt, had been exposed to something no child should ever witness. I'm okay, buddy. Just a little scratch. Already healing. But you could have died. Those men were really bad, and you fought them because of me. Because I said that lady needed help. No, no, no! Caleb pulled Mason into a tight hug. Don't you ever think that. I fought them because it was the right thing to do. Because someone needed help, and we were there to give it. You were so brave telling me about Officer Ava. You helped save her life too. Really? Really. If you hadn't noticed her, if you hadn't told me, I might have missed it. You did good, Mason. I'm proud of you. Mason sniffled against Caleb's shoulder. I was really scared. Me too. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing, even when you're scared. That's what Officer Ava said too. Then it must be true. Caleb pulled back, looking his son in the eye. If you're having nightmares, you tell me, okay? We'll talk about them. We'll figure them out together. Okay, Dad. I love you. I love you too, buddy. More than all the dinosaurs that ever lived. Mason giggled. That's a lot. That's how much. After Mason finally fell asleep, Caleb went to his own room and lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. His shoulder ached where the stitches pulled, a constant reminder of what had happened. But more than the physical pain was the emotional weight of everything. The violence, the fear, the responsibility of raising a son who'd seen his father in a fight. The unexpected connection forming with Ava. His phone buzzed with a text. Ava. Made it home safe. Thank you for dinner. And for letting me hang out with Mason. He's a great kid. Caleb typed back. He's pretty fond of you too. Fair warning. He's already planning Saturday's activities. Can't wait. Sleep well? You too. But sleep didn't come easily. Caleb's mind kept replaying the scene at the gas station. Duke's face when Caleb hit him, Tony charging like a bull, Marcus with the knife. The moment when Caleb had realized he might actually die here, might leave Mason without a father, might fail to save Ava despite his best efforts. He'd gotten lucky. They all had. A few seconds difference in timing, a few inches difference in where Marcus's knife had landed, and the outcome could have been catastrophically different. The thought should have terrified him, should have made him regret getting involved. But lying there in the dark, Caleb couldn't summon any regret, because Ava was alive. Mason had learned what it meant to stand up for others. And maybe, just maybe, some good could come from all this pain. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Ava. Can't sleep. Nightmares again. I know you said I could call, but I don't want to wake you. Caleb didn't hesitate. He dialed her number. Hello? Her voice was shaky, uncertain. Talk to me. What are you seeing? Duke. The concrete. His hands on my uniform. I can't make it stop, Caleb. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there. You're not there. You're home. You're safe. Duke is in jail. He can't hurt you. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But my brain doesn't seem to care about logic right now. Tell me about something else. Something good. Happiest memory you have. There was a pause. That's random. Just trying to get your mind somewhere else. Come on, happiest memory. Okay, I was 16. My dad took me on a ride-along for the first time. I watched him de-escalate this domestic situation, just talking this guy down from doing something stupid. No violence, no arrests, just words and patience and compassion. And afterward, I told my dad I wanted to be a cop like him. He cried. My big, tough cop dad just cried right there in the patrol car. That's a good memory. What about you? Happiest memory? Caleb thought about it. The day Mason was born. Sarah was dying. I didn't know it yet, but she was. And they put this tiny, screaming baby in my arms, and he just stopped crying, looked right at me. And I fell in love. Complete, instant, overwhelming love. Everything else in my life became secondary to this little person who needed me. That's beautiful and heartbreaking. Most of the best things are both. Caleb shifted in bed, getting comfortable. You still seeing Duke's face? No. Now I'm seeing you and Mason at dinner. The way he looks at you like you hung the moon. He's a good kid. Makes it easy to be a good dad. I don't think it's as easy as you make it look. Single parenting, running a business, being there for your son every single day, even when you must be exhausted. What else am I going to do? He's my whole world. They talked for another hour about everything and nothing. About Ava's childhood growing up in a cop family. About Caleb's years learning mechanics from his father. About Mason's obsession with dinosaurs and rocks and space. About Sarah's death and the grief that never fully went away. About the nightmares and the fear and the slow process of healing. Finally, Ava's voice started to slow, her words getting drowsy. I should let you sleep, she murmured. You getting sleepy? Yeah, finally. Thank you, Caleb, for talking me down, for being there. Anytime, I mean that. Anytime you need someone, you call me. Doesn't matter when. You're a good man, Caleb Stone. Just trying to do right. Sleep well, Ava. You too. After they hung up, Caleb finally felt sleep pulling at him. His last thought before drifting off was of Ava's smile at dinner, the way she'd listened to Mason with genuine interest, the sound of her laugh when Mason had tried to explain why velociraptors were actually small, despite what Jurassic Park showed. Saturday arrived wrapped in sunshine and Mason's barely contained excitement. He'd spent the last 2 days planning activities for Ava's visit. Space books carefully selected, his telescope dug out from the garage, snacks arranged on the kitchen counter like he was hosting a formal event. Dad, what time is she coming? Is it time yet? What about now? Mason, it's 9 in the morning. She said she'd be here around noon. You've got 3 hours to calm down. I can't calm down. We're going to look at stars and talk about planets, and maybe she'll want to see my bug collection too. Let's maybe ease her into the bug collection. Not everyone loves bugs the way you do. When Ava finally arrived, Mason practically launched himself off the porch and into her arms. She caught him, laughing, spinning him around once before setting him down. Someone's excited to see me. I have so much stuff planned. Did you know Saturn has 82 moons? I'm going to show you pictures and we can talk about which ones might have alien life. And breathe, buddy,
Caleb said, putting a hand on Mason's shoulder. Let Officer Ava actually get inside first. Just Ava is fine, she said, smiling at Caleb. Officer makes me feel like I'm working. She looked better today, more rested, less haunted. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a pale yellow, easily covered with makeup, and she moved with more confidence than she had earlier in the week. She wore jeans and a blue t-shirt, her hair down around her shoulders, and Caleb found himself noticing things he hadn't before. The way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the small scar above her left eyebrow, the graceful way she moved. He caught himself staring and looked away quickly. They spent the afternoon in Mason's room, which had been transformed into a makeshift planetarium. Mason had researched constellation patterns and created drawings, had printed out NASA photos of planets and galaxies, had prepared an entire presentation about space exploration that would have impressed a college professor. And this, Mason said, pointing to a photo of Mars, is where we're going to send astronauts next. Maybe I'll be one of them when I grow up. An astronaut, Ava said. That's a big dream. Dad says if you want something bad enough and work hard enough, you can do anything. Your dad is right. Ava glanced at Caleb, who was leaning in the doorway. He's full of good advice. I have my moments, Caleb said. They moved outside after lunch, Mason dragging his telescope into the backyard, even though it was too bright to see anything beyond the sun. He explained how it worked anyway, walking Ava through the mechanics with the same passionate intensity he brought to every interest. You're really good with him, Caleb observed, sitting on the back porch steps while Mason showed Ava how to adjust the telescope's focus. He makes it easy. He's a special kid, Caleb. The way he looks at the world, like everything is fascinating and worth understanding, that's rare. He gets that from his mother. Sarah saw magic in ordinary things. Used to drive me crazy sometimes, how she'd stop and stare at a flower or a sunset like it was the first time she'd ever seen one. But Mason inherited that wonder. You talk about her a lot. Sarah, that's good. Mason needs to know who she was. I don't want him to forget her, even though he never really knew her. Sometimes I worry I'm not doing enough, that I can't teach him the things a mother would teach him. You're doing everything right, Ava said firmly. Look at him. He's confident, curious, kind. Those are things you taught him. I had help. My dad moved in for the first 2 years. My mom visits every week. They've been amazing. But you're the one who's there every day. You're the one who reads him stories and answers his questions and shows him what it means to be a good person. Ava's voice was soft. Don't sell yourself short. Mason ran back to them, breathless. Dad, can Ava stay for dinner? Please. We're having spaghetti and I want to show her my rock collection too. Caleb looked at Ava. You're welcome to stay if you want. Though I should warn you, Mason's rock collection involves a lot of very detailed explanations. I'd love to stay, Ava said, and the smile she gave them both was genuine and warm. Dinner was chaotic in the way meals with 7-year-olds always are. Sauce splattered, garlic bread devoured, conversations bouncing from dinosaurs to space to a story about Tommy from day camp who'd eaten 3 mud pies on a dare. Through it all, Ava laughed and engaged and asked questions, fitting into their little family unit like she'd always been there. After Mason finally went to bed, after the dinosaurs were arranged, after the story was read, after the 3rd request for water was fulfilled, Caleb and Ava sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Thank you for letting me crash your Saturday, Ava said. You didn't crash anything. Mason's been talking about it all week. Just Mason? Caleb smiled. Okay. Maybe I've been looking forward to it too. I had a therapy session on Thursday. Dr. Chen, the department psychologist. She asked me about my support system, about who I was talking to about the trauma, and I realized that you're the person I've been talking to most, the person who makes me feel less crazy. Happy to help, though I'm not sure what kind of recommendation being compared to a therapist is. A good one. You listen without judging. You don't tell me to just get over it or that I'm being dramatic. You get it. Shared experience. More than that. Ava turned to face him. You're a good person, Caleb. The kind of person who runs toward danger instead of away from it. The kind of person who makes their kids' favorite dinner and reads bedtime stories and builds a life that's full of love even though you've been through hell. That's rare.
I'm just doing what anyone would do. Stop saying that. Stop minimizing what you are.
There was a fierceness in her voice now.
You saved my life. You risked everything for a stranger. You're raising an incredible kid alone. You're one of the best people I've ever met. Own that. Caleb was silent, caught off guard by her intensity. Okay, he said finally. Okay. They sat in comfortable silence, the night air cool and filled with the chirping of crickets. Caleb was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how easy it would be to reach over and take her hand, how much he wanted to. I'm scared, Ava said suddenly. I go back to work in a week and a half, and I don't know if I can do it. If I can put on the uniform and get in the cruiser and respond to calls without panicking, without seeing Duke's face every time I pull someone over. You'll be scared, but you'll do it anyway, because that's who you are. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you didn't let what happened destroy you. Because you're fighting your way through the trauma instead of giving up. Caleb met her eyes. You're stronger than you think, Ava. I wish I believed that. Then believe me when I say it, because I've seen you at your worst, and even at your worst, you were fighting. You didn't give up, not for a second. Ava's eyes were shining with tears. Thank you for everything, for saving me, for listening to me, for letting me be part of your life, even though I'm a mess right now. You're not a mess. You're healing. There's a difference. Caleb? She trailed off, seeming to struggle with words. I need to tell you something, and I don't know how you're going to take it, but I need to be honest. His heart rate picked up. Okay. I like being here, with you and Mason. More than I should, probably, given that we barely know each other, but being here makes me feel safe in a way nothing else does. And I don't know if that's just trauma bonding or if it's something more, but I needed you to know. She took a shaky breath. And if that's too much, if I'm crossing a line, tell me now and I'll back off. I don't want to make things weird or complicated when you've already done so much for me. Caleb's mind raced. He'd felt it too. This pull toward her, this sense that she belonged in his life somehow. But was it real, or was it just the aftermath of trauma throwing them together? And what about Mason? What if he let himself care about Ava and things didn't work out? His son had already lost one mother. Could Caleb risk introducing someone new into their lives? But looking at Ava, at the vulnerability in her eyes, at the courage it had taken to speak those words, Caleb knew he had to be equally honest. It's not too much, he said quietly. And you're not crossing a line, because I feel it too. This, whatever this is between us, it scares the hell out of me, honestly. I haven't been interested in anyone since Sarah died. Haven't let myself even think about it because Mason has to come first. But you, he reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You fit. Here, with us. And I don't know if it's trauma or something real, but I want to find out, if you do. I do, Ava whispered. They leaned toward each other slowly, giving each other time to change their minds, to back away. But neither did. When their lips met, it was soft and tentative, a question rather than a statement. Caleb cupped her face gently, careful of her fading bruises, and Ava's hand came up to rest on his chest, over his heart. The kiss deepened, months or maybe years of loneliness and pain flowing into something warm and hopeful. When they finally pulled apart, Ava was crying, but she was smiling too. Okay, she said. Okay, so this is happening. If you want it to be. I want it to be, but slowly. I'm still figuring myself out right now, and you have Mason to think about, and we both need to be sure this is real and not just trauma throwing us together. Slowly sounds good, Caleb agreed, though I should warn you, Mason's already half in love with you. If this doesn't work out, I'm going to have one very disappointed 7-year-old on my hands. Then we better make sure it works out. They talked for hours more, setting boundaries and expectations, being honest about fears and hopes. They agreed to take things slow, to keep things casual around Mason until they were sure, to be honest with each other if feelings changed. But underneath all the practical conversation was a current of something deeper, hope, maybe, or the beginning of love. Something that said maybe, just maybe, good things could come from terrible experiences. Maybe being broken open by trauma could let light in. Maybe saving someone's life could lead to building a life together. When Ava finally left, close to midnight, Caleb stood in the driveway and watched her drive away, his lips still tingling from their kiss. He touched his fingers to his mouth, hardly believing what had just happened. Inside, he checked on Mason one more time. His son was sprawled across the bed, dinosaurs scattered around him, a smile on his sleeping face. Caleb kissed his forehead gently. "You were right, buddy," he whispered. "I do like her, a lot. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we can let someone new in. Maybe we can be happy again." Mason stirred but didn't wake, and Caleb returned to his own bed. For the first time since the gas station incident, he fell asleep easily, his dreams full of Ava's smile and the promise of something new. The following week passed in a blur of phone calls and stolen moments. Ava came by the garage twice more, ostensibly to drop off coffee or thank Caleb again, but really just to see him, to talk, to feel that connection that was growing stronger with each passing day. They were careful around Mason, keeping things friendly and casual, but when the boy wasn't looking, their hands would brush, their eyes would meet, and the air between them would crackle with possibility. On Wednesday, Detective Morrison called Caleb with news about the case. Duke Fallon's attorney had tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA's office had refused. They were going to trial, and they wanted both Caleb and Ava to testify. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out, giving them time to prepare, but not so much time that memories would fade. "How do you feel about testifying?" Morrison asked. "Whatever it takes to put them away," Caleb said. He was under a Honda Accord, replacing the oil pan, and he had to wipe his hands before he could hold the phone properly. "I saw what happened. I'll tell the truth. The defense is going to try to paint you as a vigilante, someone who used excessive force against 3 unarmed men. They weren't unarmed. Marcus had a knife. Duke had a gun. Duke never drew the gun. That's what his lawyer is going to argue. That you attacked first, without provocation." Caleb felt anger rise in his chest, hot and bitter. "Without provocation? They were sexually assaulting a police officer. I had plenty of provocation." "I know, and the evidence supports that completely. I'm just warning you what to expect. Defense attorneys can be creative with the truth." After Morrison hung up, Caleb lay under the Honda, staring at the undercarriage, thinking about what it would mean to testify. To stand in front of a courtroom and relive that day. To have Duke Fallon staring at him from the defense table. To have strangers pick apart his actions and motivations. It made his stomach churn. But it had to be done. For Ava. For justice. For Mason, who needed to learn that doing the right thing sometimes meant facing uncomfortable consequences. That evening, after Mason was in bed, Caleb called Ava. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, I was just thinking about you. Good thoughts, I hope." "Always." He could hear the smile in her voice. "What's up?" Morrison called. "Trial's in 6 weeks. They want us both to testify." There was a long silence. Okay, I knew this was coming. I'm ready." "Are you?" Caleb asked gently. "Because it's going to mean facing Duke again, talking about what happened in front of strangers, having defense attorneys try to tear apart your testimony. I'm a cop. I've testified dozens of times. Not about your own assault." Another silence, longer this time. When Ava spoke again, her voice was smaller. "No, not about that. We can do this together. I'll be there. We'll get through it." "Together," Ava repeated, like she was testing the word. I like the sound of that. They talked for another hour, Ava sharing updates from her therapy sessions. Dr. Chen had cleared her to return to work the following week, though with the caveat that she'd need to continue therapy and check in regularly. Ava was nervous but determined, ready to prove to herself and everyone else that she could still do the job. "What if I freeze up?" she asked. "What if I get in the cruiser and panic? What if I see Duke's face every time I pull someone over?" "Then you deal with it. You breathe through it. You remember that you're stronger than your fear." Caleb paused. "And if it's too much, if you need to step away for a while longer, that's okay too. There's no shame in taking care of yourself." Morrison said the same thing. So did Dr. Chen. "Why is it so hard for me to believe it?" "Because you're a perfectionist. Because you've built your identity around being tough and capable. Admitting you're struggling feels like admitting failure." "How do you know me so well already?" "Because I was the same way after Sarah died. Thought I had to be strong all the time, never let anyone see me crack. It ate me alive until my dad sat me down and told me that strength isn't never falling apart. It's having the courage to put yourself back together. Your dad sounds wise. He has his moments. You'll meet him eventually. He's been asking about you. He has. There was something pleased in Ava's voice. Mason told him all about the lady who came to visit, who likes dinosaurs and space and knows all about rocks. Dad figured out pretty quick that this lady was someone special. Am I? Special? Caleb's heart beat faster. They'd agreed to take things slow, to be careful, but in this moment, honesty felt more important than caution. Yeah, Ava, you are. He could hear her breath catch. This scares me, Caleb. How fast this is happening. How much I already care about you and Mason. It scares me too, but maybe that's okay. Maybe the best things are always a little scary. When did you become a philosopher? When I became a single dad. You learn all kinds of wisdom when you're operating on 3 hours of sleep and trying to figure out why a 2-year-old won't stop crying. Ava laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I should let you sleep. You have work tomorrow. So do you, preparing to go back. Yeah, I'm going to the station tomorrow to catch up with Morrison and Jenkins, go over some cases, ease back into it before my official return on Monday. You'll do great. How do you know? Because you're Ava Merritt, because you don't give up. Because even at your lowest point, pinned to the concrete by 3 men, you were still fighting. That kind of strength doesn't just disappear. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me when I can't quite believe in myself yet. Anytime. That's what we do for each other now. After they hung up, Caleb sat in the quiet darkness of his living room, thinking about how much his life had changed in just 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, he'd been content in his routine. Work, Mason, the occasional beer with his dad, the comfortable numbness of a life built around loss. Now everything felt sharper, more vivid, like he'd been living in black and white and suddenly someone had turned on the color. Ava had done that. Not just by being beautiful or interesting or kind, but by reminding him that he was still alive, still capable of feeling things beyond grief and responsibility. He could care about someone again. Could imagine a future that included more than just him and Mason. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with something that felt dangerously close to hope. The police station felt different when Ava walked through the doors on Thursday afternoon. The same building, the same people, the same sounds and smells, but everything filtered through the lens of what had happened to her. Officers looked at her differently now, their eyes full of sympathy or curiosity or both. Some approached her with kind words and offers of support. Others gave her space, unsure how to act around a colleague who'd been through trauma. Captain Morrison met her in the lobby, his weathered face breaking into a smile. Merritt, good to see you back. How are you feeling? Ready to work, sir. That's not what I asked. Ava met his eyes. Nervous, scared, determined, all of the above. Honest answer. I appreciate that. Morrison gestured toward his office. Come on, let's talk. They spent an hour going over cases, catching Ava up on what had happened during her absence. A domestic violence situation that had escalated. A string of burglaries in the North End. A DUI checkpoint that had netted 3 arrests. Normal police work, the kind Ava had done 1,000 times before. But as Morrison talked, Ava found her mind drifting. She kept seeing the gas station, the parking lot, Duke's face, kept feeling the weight of 3 men holding her down, kept hearing Mason's small voice saying, that lady needs help. Merritt, you with me? Ava snapped back to attention. Sorry, yes, I'm here. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You sure you're ready to come back Monday? Because if you need more time, I don't need more time. I need to get back to work. To prove to myself that I can still do this. Proving things to yourself is fine. Just don't push too hard too fast. You've been through hell. Give yourself permission to ease back into it. I will. I promise. Jenkins found her after the meeting with Morrison, pulling her into a bear hug that made her bruised ribs ache. Damn, Merritt, you had us all worried. How you holding up? Better. Getting there. Heard about your civilian hero. Mechanic, right? Single dad? Caleb Stone. Yeah. Hell of a thing, jumping 3 guys to save a cop he didn't even know. That takes balls. It was incredibly brave. and incredibly stupid. Best kind of brave usually is. Jenkins' expression turned serious. We got your back when you come back Monday. You know that, right? Whatever you need, backup on calls, someone to ride with you for a while, anything. We're here. I know, thank you. And Merritt? That civilian of yours? You should hold on to him. Good people are hard to find. Ava felt heat rise in her cheeks. We're just friends. Sure you are. And I'm the King of England. Jenkins grinned. I've seen the way you talk about him. That's not just friends territory. After Jenkins left, Ava walked through the station, reacquainting herself with the rhythms and routines of the place. She stopped by the evidence room, the break room, the garage where the patrol cars were kept. Everything was familiar yet foreign, like returning to a childhood home and finding it smaller than you remembered. She ran into Officer Rodriguez, no relation to the Rodriguez who'd been killed years ago, in the locker room. Rodriguez was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes and an eagerness that reminded Ava of herself when she'd first started. Officer Merritt, I heard about what happened. Are you okay? I'm fine, Rodriguez. How are things with you? Good. Busy. I've been riding with Patterson this week, learning the ropes. Rodriguez hesitated. Can I ask you something about what happened? Ava tensed but nodded. Sure. Were you scared when they attacked you? Terrified. But you fought back anyway. I didn't have much choice. Still, that's brave. Really brave. Rodriguez's young face was earnest. I hope if something like that ever happens to me, I can be as strong as you were. Ava felt tears prick her eyes. She'd spent the last 2 weeks feeling weak and broken, questioning whether she could still do this job. But looking at Rodriguez, at this young officer who saw strength where Ava had only seen failure, something shifted inside her. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe survival was its own kind of victory. Thank you, Ava said quietly. That means more than you know. That evening, Ava drove to Caleb's garage without calling first. She needed to see him, to ground herself after the emotional roller coaster of the day. When she pulled into the parking lot, she found Caleb in the bay, working on a truck's transmission, his hands black with grease, his face focused. He looked up when he heard her car and broke into a smile that made her heart skip. Hey, this is a nice surprise. I was at the station today, needed to see a friendly face after. Caleb set down his tools and wiped his hands on a rag. How'd it go? Okay, hard, but okay. Everyone was supportive, maybe too supportive. I don't want to be treated like I'm made of glass. You want people to act normal. Exactly, but I don't know if normal is possible anymore. Caleb walked over to her, careful not to touch her with his greasy hands. It will be. Eventually. You'll find a new normal. Different from before, maybe, but still good. Promise? Promise. They stood close, the air between them charged with everything unspoken. Ava wanted to kiss him, wanted to feel his arms around her, wanted the comfort and safety that came from being near him. But Mason could appear at any moment. He was inside doing homework, and they'd agreed to keep things quiet for now. Where's Mason? She asked. Kitchen table, math homework. He's been at it for an hour, and I think he's about ready to throw the textbook out the window. Need help? I was pretty good at elementary school math. Be my guest. He's working on multiplication tables, and it's not going well. Ava found Mason exactly where Caleb had said, his head in his hands, his worksheet covered in erased answers and frustrated pencil marks. When he saw her, his face lit up. Ava, you're here. Can you help me? Dad's explanation makes no sense. Hey, my explanation was perfectly clear, Caleb protested from the doorway. You used car parts as examples. Who multiplies car parts? It's called real-world application. Ava laughed and sat down beside Mason. Okay, let's see what we're working with here. 7 times 8. That's a tough one. I keep forgetting if it's 54 or 56. Let me show you a trick my dad taught me. Ava drew a small grid on a piece of scrap paper. You make 7 rows and 8 columns, like this. Then you count all the squares, see? 56. Mason's eyes widened. That's so much easier than Dad's way. I heard that, Caleb called from where he was washing his hands at the kitchen sink. They worked through the homework together, Ava showing Mason tricks for the harder multiplication facts, helping him find patterns and connections. Caleb watched from the doorway, something soft and warm in his expression. When the homework was finally done, and Mason had declared Ava the best math teacher ever, they made dinner together. Caleb cooked burgers on the grill while Ava and Mason prepared a salad, and they ate at the small dining table like they'd done it 1,000 times before. "Ava, are you coming to my school thing next week?" Mason asked around a mouthful of burger. "Mason, don't talk with your mouth full," Caleb said automatically. "What school thing?" "The science fair, remember? I made the volcano. It's going to erupt and everything." "Right, the volcano. When is it?" "Next Friday, 6 o'clock. Can Ava come, please?" Caleb looked at Ava, a question in his eyes. They'd been taking things slow, keeping things casual, but a school event felt significant, public, like announcing to the world that Ava was part of their lives. "If your dad says it's okay," Ava said carefully. "I want her to come," Mason said. "She has to see my volcano. It's really cool." "Then she should come," Caleb decided. "If she wants to, no pressure." "I'd love to see your volcano," Ava told Mason. "I'll be there." Mason whooped and launched into an excited explanation of how he'd made the volcano using papier-mâché and baking soda and vinegar, his hands gesturing wildly as he described the eruption he'd perfected. Ava listened with genuine interest, asking questions and praising his scientific method. Watching them together, Caleb felt that dangerous hope grow stronger. This could work. The three of them could work. They already fit together so naturally, like pieces of a puzzle finding their place. After Mason was in bed, Caleb and Ava sat on the back porch again, the place that was becoming their spot. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "Today was good," Ava said. "Being at the station, seeing my colleagues, helping Mason with homework. Normal things. I needed normal. Monday's going to be harder, actually being back on duty. I know, but I think I'm ready, or as ready as I'll ever be." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Having you and Mason helps, knowing I have this to come back to. It makes the scary stuff feel manageable." Caleb wrapped his arm around her. "You have us, for as long as you want us." "What if I want you forever?" The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. It was too soon to talk about forever. They'd known each other barely 2 weeks, but somehow it didn't feel too soon. Somehow it felt exactly right. "Then I guess we'll figure out what forever looks like," Caleb said quietly. "Together." Ava turned to face him, her eyes shining in the starlight. "Kiss me. Please, kiss me." He did, soft and slow, pouring everything he felt into the connection between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Ava was smiling. "This is real, isn't it? Not just trauma. Not just gratitude. This is actually real." "Yeah, it's real." "Good. Because I'm falling for you, Caleb Stone, falling hard and fast and completely against my better judgment." "Same, though I'd argue your judgment is pretty sound considering." They laughed together, and in that moment, everything felt possible. The trial ahead, the return to work, the questions about their future, all of it seemed surmountable as long as they faced it together. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and Ava's alarm going off at 5 a.m. She lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the familiar weight of her anxiety pressing down. Today was the day. Back to work. Back to being Officer Ava Merritt instead of just Ava, the woman who'd been attacked and saved and was trying to piece herself back together. She showered and dressed in her uniform, each piece feeling both familiar and strange. The utility belt with her service weapon, the badge that felt heavier than it used to, the body camera that would record everything she did. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw a cop. She just hoped she could still be one. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "You've got this. Call me if you need anything. Mason and I are rooting for you." Ava smiled and texted back a heart emoji, then headed out to her cruiser. The drive to the station was short, giving her just enough time to run through breathing exercises Dr. Chen had taught her. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. Repeat. Captain Morrison met her in the garage. "Merritt, ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be, sir. Jenkins is riding with you today. Extra set of eyes, extra backup, just for the first week." I don't need a babysitter. It's not babysitting. It's standard protocol after an officer's been assaulted. Humor me. Jenkins appeared, grinning. Come on, partner. Let's go fight some crime. The first call came an hour into their shift. A minor traffic accident on the east side. No injuries, just two drivers exchanging insurance information. Routine. Simple. But when Ava pulled up to the scene, her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You okay? Jenkins asked quietly. Fine. I'm fine. She got out of the cruiser, approached the two drivers, and launched into the familiar routine of taking statements and filling out the accident report. Her hands shook slightly as she wrote, but she pushed through it, focusing on the task at hand. Just another accident. Just another day. The second call was a wellness check on an elderly resident who hadn't been seen in a few days. The woman was fine, just dealing with a bad cold, but grateful for the visit. The third call was a noise complaint, neighbors arguing about a barking dog. Normal police work. Nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous. But every time Ava approached a car or a house or a stranger, she felt Duke's hands on her, felt the concrete against her back, felt the helplessness of being overpowered. You're doing great, Jenkins told her during their lunch break. I know this is hard, but you're pushing through it. I don't feel like I'm doing great. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Sometimes that's the same thing. Jenkins took a bite of his sandwich. First day back is always the hardest. It'll get easier. By the end of the shift, Ava was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained in a way that had nothing to do with the actual work. She'd handled 6 calls, filled out a mountain of paperwork, and not once had she broken down or panicked or done anything that would make Morrison doubt her readiness. But driving home, she couldn't stop shaking. She called Caleb the moment she walked in the door. I did it. First day back. I survived. I knew you would. How do you feel? Like I just ran a marathon while being chased by bears uphill in a snowstorm. Caleb laughed. That good, huh? It was hard, Caleb. Every call, every person I talked to, I kept waiting for something to go wrong. Kept expecting Duke to appear out of nowhere. My body was on high alert for 8 straight hours. That'll get better. Your nervous system is still recovering. Give it time. Everyone keeps saying give it time. How much time? As much as you need. There's no deadline for healing. Ava collapsed onto her couch. Can I see you tonight? I know it's a Monday and you have Mason, but I really need to see a friendly face. Come over for dinner. Mason's been asking about you all day anyway. I'll be there in 30 minutes. When Ava arrived at Caleb's house, Mason greeted her at the door with a drawing he'd made. A picture of the 3 of them standing under a rainbow, all holding hands and smiling. I made this for you, because you're part of our family now. Ava's throat tightened. It's beautiful, Mason. Can I keep it? Duh, that's why I made it for you. Caleb appeared behind his son, smiling. He's been working on it all afternoon, used up half my printer paper. Best use of printer paper I can think of. They had dinner, chicken and rice, simple and comforting, and Ava felt the tension slowly drain from her shoulders. This was what she needed. Not another therapy session or another well-meaning colleague telling her she was brave. Just this. Dinner with Caleb and Mason. Ordinary conversation. Laughter over Mason's story about the kid at day camp who'd tried to eat paste. After Mason was in bed, Caleb held Ava on the couch, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her like he could protect her from everything bad in the world. Thank you, she whispered, for being here, for letting me be here, for making this nightmare bearable. You're making my life better too. You know that, right? You and Mason, you've given me a reason to feel something other than grief and responsibility. You've reminded me that I'm still alive, still capable of more than just going through the motions. We're helping each other. Yeah, we are. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, finding comfort in the simple fact of not being alone. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows, but inside they were warm and safe, and together. And for now, that was enough. The week progressed, each day a little easier than the last. Ava responded to calls, wrote reports, fell back into the rhythms of police work. Jenkins rode with her for 3 days, then Morrison decided she was ready to fly solo again. The nightmares still came, but less frequently. The panic attacks still happened, but she was learning to breathe through them. And through it all, Caleb and Mason were there. Dinners at the house, phone calls late at night, text messages throughout the day. Nothing profound, just thinking of you, or Mason wants to show you his new rock, or how's your day going? On Friday evening, Ava found herself at Mason's school for the science fair, standing in the crowded cafeteria among dozens of other parents and guardians. Mason's volcano was prominently displayed, complete with a handmade sign explaining the chemical reaction between baking soda and vinegar. "You ready for the big show?" Ava asked him. Mason nodded solemnly. "I've been practicing. Dad says I can't make the eruption too big or they'll make me clean it up." Probably wise advice. When it was Mason's turn to present, he stood beside his volcano with absolute confidence, explaining the science behind volcanic eruptions to the judges. Then, with dramatic flair, he poured the vinegar into the baking soda mixture, and the volcano erupted in a satisfying fountain of foam. The judges applauded. Ava and Caleb cheered. Mason beamed with pride. "That was amazing," Ava told him afterward. "You're going to be a famous scientist someday. Or an astronaut. Or a paleontologist. I haven't decided yet. You've got time to figure it out." As they walked to the parking lot, Mason, between them holding both their hands, an older woman approached. "Caleb, is that you?" Caleb turned and his face broke into a warm smile. "Mrs. Patterson, how have you been?" "Oh, getting older, fighting with my joints." The woman's eyes moved to Ava, then to Mason, then back to Caleb with open curiosity. "And who's this lovely lady?" "This is Ava. Ava, this is Mrs. Patterson. She taught 3rd grade for 40 years, including my 3rd grade year. And you were quite a handful, as I recall." Mrs. Patterson smiled at Ava. "Are you Caleb's?" There was a pause. Caleb and Ava hadn't discussed what to call their relationship. They'd been so focused on taking things slow, on being careful, that they'd never actually defined what they were to each other. "She's my friend," Mason piped up. "But Dad likes her. Likes her. I saw them kissing." Caleb's face turned red. "Mason." "What?" "You did, last night on the porch. I got up for water and saw through the window." Mrs. Patterson laughed. "Well, that's certainly clear enough. It's good to see you happy, Caleb. You deserve it, after everything you've been through with Sarah." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson." After the former teacher walked away, Caleb looked at Ava, embarrassed and apologetic. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for him to—" "It's okay." Ava was smiling. "Actually, it's more than okay. Because he's right. We do like each other. So maybe we should stop dancing around it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want this to be real, official. I want to be your girlfriend, Caleb, if you want me to be." Caleb's smile was bright enough to rival the sunset. "I want you to be. More than I've wanted anything in a long time." "Does this mean Ava's going to live with us?" Mason asked hopefully. "Whoa, slow down there, buddy," Caleb said. "We're taking things one step at a time." "But she could, right? Eventually?" Ava knelt down to Mason's level. "Maybe eventually. If your dad and I keep liking each other this much. But for now, I'll just visit a lot. Is that okay?" "I guess. As long as you keep helping me with homework and teaching me about space stuff." "Deal." They went for ice cream to celebrate Mason's volcano success, sitting at a picnic table outside the small shop, watching the sunset and painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Ava felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: contentment, peace. The sense that despite everything terrible that had happened, maybe life could still be good, maybe even better than before. The trial date arrived on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after the attack, bringing with it gray skies that threatened rain and a knot of anxiety in Ava's stomach that no amount of breathing exercises could ease. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her dress uniform for the 3rd time, checking that every button was perfectly aligned, every crease sharp and professional. The bruises had long since faded, the physical wounds healed, but standing here preparing to face Duke Fallon again made her feel like she was back on that hot concrete, helpless and terrified. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "Mason and I are sending you strength. You've got this. See you at the courthouse." Ava smiled despite her nerves. Caleb would be testifying today too, and knowing he'd be there, that they'd face this together, made the impossible seem merely difficult. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building of gray stone and tall windows that had stood for over a century. Ava arrived early, as instructed by the DA's office, and was immediately ushered into a small conference room where Assistant District Attorney Rachel Chen was waiting with a stack of files and 2 cups of coffee. Officer Merritt, thank you for being punctual. How are you feeling? Nervous? Ready to get this over with? Understandable. Chen was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and intense, with a reputation for never losing a case she believed in. Let's go over your testimony one more time. The defense is going to try to paint this as a misunderstanding, possibly even claim their clients were the victims of police harassment. We need your testimony to be clear, consistent, and unshakable. They spent the next hour reviewing every detail: the traffic stop, the realization that it was Duke Fallon, the decision to proceed, the attack, Caleb's intervention. Chen asked the questions a dozen different ways, preparing Ava for the defense attorney's tactics. They're going to ask why you didn't wait for backup. They're going to suggest you provoked the attack. They're going to try to make you doubt yourself. Chen's voice was firm. Don't let them. You did everything by the book. You were ambushed by 3 violent felons. None of this was your fault. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally? Ava was quiet for a moment. Emotionally, I still wonder if I could have done something differently. If I should have waited. If I made mistakes that put myself in danger. That's the trauma talking. That's your brain trying to find a way you could have controlled the situation. But the truth is, you couldn't have. Duke Fallon planned this. He saw an opportunity for revenge, and he took it. You were the victim of a premeditated attack. Then why do I still feel like I failed? Because you're human. Because trauma makes us question everything. But you didn't fail, Officer Merritt. You survived. And now you're going to make sure those men never hurt anyone else. Chen checked her watch. Court starts in 30 minutes. Mr. Stone should be arriving soon. He's testifying right after you. As if summoned, there was a knock on the conference room door, and Caleb appeared, wearing dress pants and a button-up shirt, his hair neatly combed, looking uncomfortable but determined. Behind him stood an older man who had to be his father, same build, same eyes, though his hair was completely gray. Ava. Caleb's face relaxed when he saw her. How are you holding up? Better now that you're here, she turned to the older man. You must be Mr. Stone. Call me Robert, and you must be the officer my grandson hasn't stopped talking about for the past month and a half. Robert's handshake was firm, his eyes kind. Thank you for what you do. Can't be easy wearing that uniform. It has its moments. Ava glanced at Caleb. Where's Mason? With my mom. Didn't want him here for this. He's already seen too much. Chen stood. Mr. Stone, we'll need to go over your testimony as well. Officer Merritt, why don't you take a few minutes to compose yourself? We'll reconvene in the courtroom. After Chen and Robert left to prep Caleb, Ava and Caleb had a brief moment alone. He crossed to her immediately, taking her hands in his. You look terrified. I am terrified. I have to sit in that courtroom with Duke staring at me. I have to relive the worst moment of my life in front of strangers. I have to be calm and professional when all I want to do is scream. Then scream, right now, in this room. Get it out. What? I'm serious. No one's listening. Let it out. Ava stared at him for a moment, then opened her mouth and screamed. Not loud, but raw and cathartic, releasing some of the tension coiled in her chest. When she finished, she felt marginally better, lighter. Feel better? Actually, yes. How did you know that would help? I used to scream in my car after Sarah died. Just drive out to the desert and scream until my throat was raw. It helped. Not a lot, but some. Caleb cupped her face gently. Listen to me. You are strong enough for this. You are brave enough. And I'll be right there with you, okay? Okay. And after this is over, after we put these bastards away, we're taking Mason out for ice cream and spending the evening doing absolutely nothing important. That sounds perfect. The courtroom was packed when they entered. Ava recognized several of her fellow officers, Captain Morrison, Detective Sarah Morrison, and a handful of reporters in the back row. Duke Fallon sat at the defense table with his attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Tony Reeves and Marcus Webb were at separate tables with their own lawyers, all 3 defendants having decided against a joint defense. Duke looked thinner than Ava remembered, his prison jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame, but his eyes held the same malice, the same hatred. When he saw her, his lips curved into a smile that made Ava's blood run cold. She forced herself to look away, focusing instead on the American flag hanging behind the judge's bench, the seal of the state, anything but those eyes that haunted her nightmares. The Honorable Judge Patricia Williams entered, and everyone rose. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for running a tight courtroom. After the preliminaries, ADA Chen stood to call her first witness. The state calls Officer Ava Merritt. Ava's legs felt like water as she walked to the witness stand. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down, acutely aware of every eye in the courtroom on her. Chen approached with a warm, encouraging smile.
Officer Merritt, can you please tell the court about the events of July 15th of this year? Ava took a deep breath and began. She described the traffic stop, seeing the expired registration, running the plates and realizing it was Duke Fallon. She explained her decision to proceed with the stop despite the potential danger, her call for backup, the way Duke and his associates had lured her behind the gas station. And what happened when you went behind the building? Chen asked. They attacked me. Tony Reeves grabbed my left arm. Marcus Webb grabbed my right. Duke Fallon. Ava's voice caught. She cleared her throat. Duke Fallon began tearing at my uniform. His intentions were clear. Can you elaborate on what you mean by his intentions? Objection. Calls for speculation, Duke's attorney interrupted. Overruled. The witness may answer based on her observations and experience. Ava met Chen's eyes. Duke Fallon was attempting to sexually assault me.
He said, and I quote, 2 years I waited for this. You took everything from me. Now I'm going to take something from you. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Williams banged her gavel. Order, Chen continued. What happened next? I fought back as hard as I could, but I was pinned down. 3 against 1, I had no chance. I thought, Ava's voice broke. I thought I was going to die. Or worse. And then? And then Caleb Stone appeared, a civilian who'd stopped for gas with his son. His son saw what was happening and told his father I needed help. Mr. Stone didn't hesitate. He came around the corner and engaged all 3 attackers. Can you describe Mr. Stone's actions? He punched Duke Fallon, fought with Tony Reeves, and was slashed with a knife by Marcus Webb while defending me. He showed extraordinary courage and likely saved my life. Chen nodded. Thank you, Officer Merritt. No further questions. Duke's attorney stood, buttoning his suit jacket with theatrical flair. His name was Martin Berkowitz, and he had the kind of smooth confidence that came from winning more cases than he lost. Officer Merritt, isn't it true that you had a personal vendetta against my client? No, I arrested him 2 years ago for drug trafficking. That's my job. But you testified against him. You were the reason he went to prison. I testified truthfully about what I witnessed. The jury convicted him based on evidence. Evidence you collected. You built the case against him. Along with several other officers and DEA agents, yes. So when you saw his van on Highway 12, you saw an opportunity for harassment, to pull him over on a minor traffic violation and give him a hard time. No, I saw a vehicle with expired registration. That's a legitimate reason for a stop. A legitimate reason? Or a convenient excuse? Berkowitz moved closer to the witness stand. Tell me, Officer Merritt, why didn't you wait for backup? You knew Duke Fallon was potentially dangerous. You knew he'd threatened you. Yet you proceeded alone. Backup was 23 minutes away. If I'd waited and the suspects had fled, they would have escaped. Or you could have followed at a safe distance until backup arrived. But you didn't. You confronted 3 men alone. Some might call that reckless. Objection, argumentative, Chen said. Sustained. Berkowitz smiled. Let me rephrase. Officer Merritt, would you say your decision to approach the van without backup was tactically sound? Ava felt heat rise in her cheeks. This was exactly what Chen had warned her about. The defense trying to make her doubt herself, trying to suggest she'd brought this on herself. In hindsight, I should have waited, but I made the decision I thought was right at the time based on the information I had. A decision that put you in danger. A decision that one might argue was motivated by your desire to arrest Duke Fallon again, rather than standard police procedure. That's not true. I followed protocol. Protocol that says to wait for backup when dealing with known dangerous suspects. Objection. Counsel is testifying, Chen interjected. Withdrawn. Berkowitz changed tactics. Officer Merritt, you claim my client attempted to sexually assault you, but isn't it true that he never actually assaulted you? That Mr. Caleb Stone intervened before anything happened? Ava's hands gripped the arms of the witness chair. He was in the process of assaulting me. His hands were on my body, tearing my uniform. His intent was absolutely clear. Intent, but no actual assault occurred, because Caleb Stone stopped it. Or because there was no intent to assault at all. Perhaps my client was simply trying to restrain you while he explained his grievances about his wrongful conviction. Wrongful? Ava couldn't believe what she was hearing. He wasn't wrongfully convicted. He was guilty. The evidence was overwhelming. In your opinion, but that's not what we're here to discuss. Berkowitz smiled again, a predator's smile. No further questions. Ava stepped down from the witness stand on shaking legs. She avoided looking at Duke as she returned to her seat, but she could feel his eyes on her, could feel the weight of his hatred like a physical thing. Caleb was called next. He walked to the witness stand with quiet confidence, his eyes finding Ava's for just a moment, a silent communication of support and solidarity. Chen took him through his testimony, the stop for gas, Mason noticing Ava behind the building, the decision to intervene. Caleb spoke clearly and calmly, describing the fight, the knife wound, the moment when backup arrived. Mr. Stone, you're not a police officer. You have no combat training, yet you chose to fight 3 violent criminals. Why? Because someone needed help. Because my son was watching. Because it was the right thing to do. Were you aware you could have been killed? Yes. And you did it anyway? Yes. Without hesitation, Chen smiled. Thank you, Mr. Stone. You're a hero. Objection. Counsel is editorializing, Berkowitz said. Sustained. Jury will disregard that last comment. But Judge Williams was smiling slightly, and everyone in the courtroom knew the word hero had already taken root. When Berkowitz stood to cross-examine Caleb, there was a different energy in his approach, more cautious, less aggressive. Even he seemed to recognize that attacking a civilian who'd risked his life to save a cop would play poorly with the jury. Mr. Stone, you admit you threw the first punch, correct? I defended Officer Merritt from an active assault. But you threw the first punch. You initiated physical contact. Duke Fallon and his associates had already initiated physical contact with Officer Merritt. They were holding her down, tearing her uniform. I stopped an assault in progress. In your judgment, but you're not a trained law enforcement officer. How could you be certain what you were witnessing? I have eyes. I know what an assault looks like. 3 men holding down a woman, one of them tearing at her clothes. There's no ambiguity there. You severely injured my client, gave him a concussion, broke his nose, fractured his jaw. I used the minimum force necessary to stop him from assaulting Officer Merritt. Minimum force? You attacked 3 unarmed men. Marcus Webb had a knife. He used it on me. Caleb gestured to his shoulder. 12 stitches. The scar is permanent. That occurred after you initiated the altercation. I initiated nothing. I stopped a crime in progress. If you want to paint me as the aggressor here, good luck with that. There was a ripple of laughter through the courtroom. Even Judge Williams looked amused. Berkowitz's face reddened, and he quickly wrapped up his cross-examination. The prosecution called several more witnesses, officers who'd arrived on scene, the paramedics who'd treated Ava and Caleb, the forensic technician who'd documented the torn uniform and blood evidence. Each piece of testimony built a damning picture of Duke Fallon and his associates. The defense tried to counter with character witnesses for Duke, people who claimed he was a good man who'd made mistakes, who'd been reformed by his time in prison. But their testimony rang hollow against the physical evidence and the accounts of what had happened behind that gas station. The trial lasted 3 days. Ava sat through all of it, listening to every witness, watching the jury's reactions. Caleb was there too, in the gallery, a constant source of support. During breaks, they'd find each other, hold hands for a moment, draw strength from the connection between them. On the third day, closing arguments began. Ada Chen was passionate and precise, walking the jury through the evidence, the testimonies, the inescapable conclusion that Duke Fallon and his associates had committed violent felonies. Duke Fallon waited 2 years for revenge, 2 years to plan an attack on the officer who'd arrested him. And when he saw his opportunity, he took it. He and his associates ambushed Officer Merritt, overpowered her, and attempted to sexually assault her in broad daylight behind a gas station. Chen's voice was steel. If not for the courage of Caleb Stone, a civilian with no training who risked his life to save a stranger, we might be here trying a murder case. Or worse. Berkowitz's closing argument tried to create doubt, suggesting that Ava had provoked the confrontation, that the attack had been defensive rather than premeditated, that Caleb's intervention had been excessive. But his words felt empty, unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood to read the verdict, her voice steady and clear. In the case of the state versus Duke Fallon, on the charge of assault on a police officer, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempted sexual assault, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of making terroristic threats, we find the defendant guilty. Ava felt tears stream down her face as the verdicts continued. Guilty on all counts. Tony Reeves, guilty on all counts. Marcus Webb, guilty on all counts. Duke Fallon's face went pale, then red with rage. He lunged toward the prosecutor's table, screaming obscenities, and bailiffs tackled him to the ground. The courtroom erupted in chaos until Judge Williams restored order with sharp bangs of her gavel. Mr. Fallon, you will control yourself or you will be removed. Sentencing will be scheduled for 3 weeks from today. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, in the fading afternoon light, Ava collapsed into Caleb's arms. She was crying and laughing at the same time, overwhelmed by relief and vindication and the release of 6 weeks of tension. It's over, she sobbed into his shoulder. It's finally over. You did it. You were so strong in there. We did it. Together. She pulled back to look at him. I couldn't have done this without you. Any of it. Captain Morrison approached, his weathered face breaking into a rare smile. Hell of a job in there, Merritt. Both of you. The department is proud. Other officers gathered around, offering congratulations and support. Robert Stone appeared with Mason, who'd been waiting in a park nearby, and the boy launched himself at Ava with such force she nearly fell over. You won! Dad said you won! We won, buddy. Your dad and I both. Does this mean the bad men are going away forever? For a very long time, Caleb confirmed. They can't hurt anyone anymore. Mason hugged Ava tighter. Good. Because you're part of our family now and nobody hurts our family. Ava's heart swelled. That's right. Nobody hurts our family. They went for ice cream as planned, the 4 of them, Ava, Caleb, Mason, and Robert, sitting at a picnic table outside the shop, watching the sunset and painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Mason chattered excitedly about his day at camp, seemingly unaffected by the gravity of what had just happened in that courtroom. Children had that gift, Ava thought, that ability to live in the moment, to not carry the weight of everything that had come before. So what happens now? Robert asked, directing the question at both Ava and Caleb. You two going to keep dancing around each other, or are you going to make this official? Dad, Caleb said, embarrassed. What? I'm an old man. I don't have time for subtlety. You two clearly care about each other. Mason's already calling her family. Seems to me you should make it real. We are real, Ava said softly. We're just taking it slow. Slow is good, smart even, but don't let slow turn into never. Robert's eyes were kind. Life's too short. Trust me. I know. After Robert took Mason home, promising to read him 2 extra bedtime stories, Caleb and Ava drove to the overlook point on the east side of town, a spot where you could see the entire valley spread out below, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. They sat on the hood of Caleb's truck, shoulders touching, watching the night deepen. Your dad's right, Ava said. We should talk about this. About us. About what we want. What do you want? Honestly, everything. I want mornings with you and Mason. I want to help with homework and watch science fairs. I want to be there when Mason loses his first tooth.
and when he graduates high school. I want to build a life with you." She took a shaky breath. "And that terrifies me because we barely know each other, and this is all happening so fast, and what if I'm not ready for this?" "Are you finished?" Caleb asked gently. "I think so." "Good. Because I want all of that too, every single bit of it. And yes, it's fast, and yes, it's scary, but Ava, I haven't felt this alive since Sarah died. You've given me hope. You've given Mason a chance to see what love looks like. And maybe it's too soon to say this, maybe I should wait, but I'm falling in love with you. Actually, scratch that. I've already fallen. I'm in love with you." Ava turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too."
I think I've loved you since that first day at the garage when you made terrible coffee and listened to me fall apart without judgment. The coffee wasn't that bad. It was awful. Okay, it was pretty terrible. Caleb cupped her face, his thumb wiping away her tears. "So what do we do now?" "Now we keep going, one day at a time. We let this grow into whatever it's meant to be. We include Mason in every decision. We don't rush, but we don't hold back either." Ava smiled through her tears. "And maybe, eventually, I move some of my stuff into your place. Maybe I become a permanent fixture at dinner. Maybe we become a real family. We're already a real family. Have been since that first dinner with the lasagna. Then maybe we make it official, but not yet. Not until we're both sure. I'm already sure. Then not until I'm sure." Ava kissed him softly. "Give me time to get my head straight, to finish healing, to know that this is real love and not just trauma bonding. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." They stayed at the overlook until the stars came out in full force, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Ava pointed out constellations she'd learned from Mason's space books, and Caleb told her stories his father had told him about the stars, and they talked about everything and nothing until they were both yawning. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon, Ava sat in the same courtroom for Duke Fallon's sentencing. He stood before Judge Williams in shackles, his face gaunt and angry, as she read out his sentence. "Duke Fallon, you have been convicted of assault on a police officer, attempted sexual assault, making terroristic threats, and weapons violations. This court finds your actions reprehensible and your lack of remorse disturbing. You planned and executed a violent attack on an officer of the law. You showed no mercy, no compassion, no regard for human dignity." Judge Williams' voice was ice. "Therefore, this court sentences you to 25 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. In addition, you will be registered as a sex offender and will be subject to lifetime supervision upon release." Duke's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. That bitch deserved what she got. She destroyed my life." "Remove the defendant," Judge Williams ordered, and bailiffs dragged Duke from the courtroom as he screamed obscenities. Tony Reeves received 20 years. Marcus Webb received 18. All three would spend the better part of their lives behind bars. Outside the courthouse, Ava breathed in the cool autumn air and felt something lift from her shoulders. The weight of fear, of waiting, of wondering if justice would be done. It had been done. Duke Fallon would never hurt her or anyone else again. Caleb was waiting for her on the courthouse steps, and she walked into his arms without hesitation. "It's really over now," she said. "It's really over. Thank you for everything. For saving me, for supporting me, for loving me even when I was broken. You were never broken, just bent, and you straightened yourself back out just fine." 6 months later, on a spring morning when the desert was blooming with wildflowers and the air was sweet with possibility, Ava moved the last of her boxes into Caleb's house. It had taken time to get here. Months of therapy, of working through trauma, of building trust and love, and a foundation strong enough to support a life together. But they'd made it. Mason helped carry in her collection of books, chattering excitedly about how they'd arranged his room to make space for Ava's stuff, how she'd have her own drawer in the bathroom, how they were a real family, now just like he'd always wanted. "Does this mean you're my mom now?" Mason asked as they unpacked boxes in the living room. Ava knelt down to his level, her heart full. "I'm not your mom. Your mom was Sarah, and she'll always be your mom. But I can be someone who loves you just as much. Someone who's here for you. What do you want to call me?" Mason thought about this seriously.
Can I just call you Ava? Because you're Ava, and that's perfect. That's perfect to me, too. That evening, after boxes were unpacked and Mason was asleep, Ava and Caleb sat on the back porch, their spot, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. I keep thinking about that day at the gas station, Ava said, about how everything terrible led to everything good. If Duke hadn't attacked me, I never would have met you. Mason never would have seen me behind that building. We never would have become this. Butterfly effect. One moment changing everything that comes after. Do you think things happen for a reason? That there's some grand plan? Caleb considered this. I think terrible things happen, and sometimes, if we're lucky, we find good people who help us through the terrible things.
And sometimes those good people become the best things in our lives. But I don't think Sarah died so I could meet you. I don't think you were attacked so we could fall in love. I think bad things happened, and we made something good out of the aftermath. I like that better. The idea that we create our own meaning. We do, every day, with every choice. Caleb took her hand, and I choose this. You, me, Mason. This family we're building. This life. I choose it too. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the house, Mason was dreaming of dinosaurs and space and all the adventures tomorrow would bring. Somewhere in the city, Duke Fallon was locked in a cell, his hatred eating him from the inside. But here, on this porch, in this moment, there was only love and peace and the quiet certainty that they'd found something worth fighting for. Ava leaned her head on Caleb's shoulder. Tell me something. That day at the gas station when you first saw what was happening, were you scared? Terrified. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. Every instinct told me to get Mason and run. But you didn't. No. Because I looked at my son, and I knew I couldn't teach him to run from someone else's pain. I had to teach him to run toward it, to be the kind of man who helps when help is needed. You taught him well. He's already such a good kid. He had good teachers, me, my dad, my mom, and now you. Caleb kissed the top of her head. We're going to do good things, the three of us. We're going to raise a good man. We're going to build a good life. We're going to love each other through whatever comes next. Promise? Promise. The years that followed proved him right. Ava continued her work as a police officer, earning commendations for her service and eventually making detective. Caleb's garage thrived, and he hired 2 more mechanics to handle the growing business. Mason grew from a curious 7-year-old into a bright, compassionate teenager who volunteered at the local animal shelter and talked seriously about becoming a veterinarian instead of an astronaut or paleontologist. They had their struggles. Relationships always do. There were arguments about money and parenting and whose turn it was to do the dishes. There were nights when Ava's nightmares returned and Caleb held her while she cried. There were moments when the weight of raising a child and building a business and maintaining a relationship felt overwhelming. But through it all, they had each other. They had the foundation built in trauma, but reinforced with love. They had the memory of that day at the gas station, the worst day of Ava's life, and somehow also the beginning of the best chapter. 2 years after Ava moved in, on a crisp autumn evening at the overlook point where they'd first said, "I love you," Caleb proposed. It was simple and perfect. Just him and Ava, and a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, and the question he'd been wanting to ask since the day she'd brought lasagna to his garage. Marry me. Build this life with me officially. Let me love you for the rest of our days. Ava said yes without hesitation, and when they told Mason, he whooped with joy and immediately started planning the wedding, insisting they needed a dinosaur-themed cake because dinosaurs make everything better. They compromised on subtle dinosaur decorations, and on a sunny spring day 6 months later, surrounded by family and friends and fellow officers, Ava and Caleb Stone became husband and wife. Captain Morrison walked Ava down the aisle. Mason served as best man, taking his duties very seriously. And when the officiant pronounced them married, the whole congregation erupted in applause. At the reception, Officer Jenkins gave a speech that had everyone laughing and crying in equal measure. I've known Ava Stone now, for 8 years. In all that time, I never saw her let her guard down. She was all cop, all business, all the time. Then she met this mechanic and his kid, And suddenly she was smiling, laughing, being human instead of just being a badge. Caleb Stone saved her life that day at the gas station. But in the months and years that followed, he saved her in a different way, by showing her what love looks like, by being there through the nightmares and the therapy and the trial, by choosing her every single day. That's the real kind of heroism, not the flashy, dramatic kind, the quiet, steady, everyday kind. Later, as Ava and Caleb danced their first dance as husband and wife, Mason ran up and insisted on joining them. So the three of them danced together. This family born from tragedy and built with love, and everyone watching knew they were witnessing something special. "I love you," Ava whispered to Caleb as they swayed to the music. "I love you too. Both of you. My whole world." "Best day ever," Mason announced. "Even better than when my volcano won second place at the science fair." They laughed together, and in that moment, everything was perfect. Not perfect like nothing bad had ever happened. Perfect like they'd survived the bad things and chosen to build something beautiful in the aftermath. Perfect like love and family and second chances. Years later, when people asked Ava about the attack at the gas station, she'd tell them the truth. Yes, it was traumatic. Yes, she still had occasional nightmares. Yes, it changed her in fundamental ways. But she'd also tell them about the good that came after, about Caleb and Mason, about the family they built, about how the worst day of her life had led to the best years. And if they asked what she'd learned from it all, she'd smile and say this: "I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. I learned that good people exist, people who run toward danger instead of away from it, who risk everything for strangers, who choose love even when it's complicated. And I learned that we're stronger than we think, that we can survive terrible things and still build beautiful lives." That's what Caleb taught me. That's what Mason reminds me every day, and that's what I try to pass on to others. The knowledge that even in our darkest moments, even when we're pinned down and terrified and certain we won't survive, help can come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes that help transforms into love, and that love transforms into a life worth living. She'd think about that 7-year-old boy who'd said, "Dad, that lady needs help." She'd think about the single father who'd walked toward danger without hesitation. She'd think about the 12 stitches in Caleb's shoulder, the scar he still carried, the price he'd paid for being a good man. And she'd be grateful for the attack that brought them together, for the trauma that taught her strength, for the healing that came after, for the love that made everything worth it, for the family that chose each other every single day. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not the violence or the fear or the nightmares, but the love, the choice to keep going, the decision to build something good from something terrible, the courage to open your heart even when it's been broken, the faith that tomorrow could be better than today. Ava had learned all of that behind a gas station on Highway 12, on the worst and somehow best day of her life. And she'd spend the rest of her years living out those lessons with the two people she loved most in the world. The thugs had attacked her behind that gas station, but Caleb Stone and his son Mason had given her a reason to fight back, to survive, to thrive, to love again. And that made all the difference.